Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 2018 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Olivia Colman won for her performance in The Favorite. But why did she beat fellow nominees Yalitza Aparicio, Glenn Close, Lady Gaga, and Melissa McCarthy? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello, and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 91st year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which covered the films of 2018. We'll be discussing how Olivia Colman won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today is Oscar royalty, as far as I'm concerned. He's the owner and host of the great Fritz and the Oscars YouTube channel. He's joined me on the 1949 Best Actress episode and the 1989 episode. So thrilled that he's back here to break down one of the most iconic Best Actress races of the 21st century, and a race that is very important to me in particular. Welcome back, Fritz.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me again. Thank you so much for allowing me to McDormand my way into your podcast. And of course, for this very, very special episode. It feels like everything so far was a very long foreplay, and we have waited for this one.
Yes.
Very honored to be on this one.
Yeah, it was all leading up to this. So very excited to have you on, one of the greats. So had to have a great guest for this one. But before we talk 2018, let's talk Best Actress as a category. So you've told me that your favorite Best Actress win was, of course, Louise Reiner for The Good Earth. And
never forget,
yes. And you've told me your favorite Best Actress lineup was 1962, which is a little more of a conventional pick than Louise Reiner.
Yes.
So my third question here, since you're a third timer, who's an actress that you think will win Best Actress in the future who hasn't already?
So, I mean, it feels kind of obvious to say that Saoirse Ronan will probably win Best Actress at some point. I'm trying to be kind of realistic. I'm not too much of a dreamer to say names that are maybe... Of course, I'm always happy to be proven wrong when an actress who is usually never on the radar suddenly gets a big break. I just thought to keep it a little more realistic, I thought for myself, I think Viola Davis will at some point win Best Actress. I think she will get that second one.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm maybe a little bit more a dreamer. I'm just talking it into existence right now. At some point, Toni Collette will get this big, showy role, more conventional role. She will sweep the Critics Awards. She will sweep then the All Televised Awards and win her Oscar.
Wow.
I'm just gonna say it will happen.
That is quite a dream that I hope comes true. Because, I mean, obviously this is a very important year for her career with Hereditary and her semi-campaign that she had, which sadly didn't go past Critics' Choice. But yeah, I agree. I think she's someone who, when the stars align, I think the industry will line up to reward her. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's
should have happened for Muriel's wedding already. She will someday. She will be there. I'm just gonna say it will happen.
Yeah, and I certainly think Viola Davis seems like someone who people will be definitely clamoring to get a lead Oscar for, kind of like Cate Blanchett, that sort of thing. Like, we just need to give you a lead. You're a leading lady star, so you deserve one. Yes. So great picks, and many people have said Saoirse when I've asked this question, but yeah, definitely think she's on the radar for that. But my other question for you, you told me your most heartbreaking loss in this category. You told me the joint losses of Ingrid Bergman in Autumn Sonata, Jill Clayburgh in An Unmarried Woman, and Geraldine Page in Interiors in 1978. Plus, as luck would have it, you also said Glenn Close in The Wife this very year. So that's
Yeah.
wild. I didn't even remember that you had said that before I asked you to do this episode. So this was really serendipitous. But you also told me your most heartbreaking snub in this category was Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady in 1964. Great pick. So my third question for you now, who is an actress? If you could pick any actress to win this category, who would you most want to win, even if you maybe don't think they will, possibly?
Again, I'm probably too much of a realist. I think Eric mentioned Liv Ullmann as someone he would love to see. And I mean, of course, I would also love to see her, but again, how likely
Right.
is this? But again, maybe my choices are also not that likely, but it's like this group of actresses that we all love and we all just want to see. It's like our Annette Bening, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sigourney Weaver, Laura Linney, Joan Allen, just all these great actresses that we just want to see win an Oscar. But I just picked for my number one. Again, very perfect for this episode. I want Glenn Close to have her Best Actress Oscar. No disrespect to supporting ladies. You count, you are important. But Glenn Close, you also just said it about Viola Davis, she is a leading lady star. She needs to have her leading lady Oscar.
Yeah, no arguments from me. I will agree and definitely agree with that class of actresses who mostly came from the 80s and 90s. That's kind of when they came about. Finally, like, it seems like their time weirdly passed, but also they're still working and they're still putting in great work. So yeah, I'm always holding out hope for that particular group.
Yeah. I mean, if Annette Bening can get nominated for Naiad, if she does something really great, then she should be able to win.
How dare you imply that Naiad was not really great?
I'm sorry. Sorry to all the Naiad stands out there.
Yes, the swimmers, the dreamers. Yes, love that. Love those picks. All right, let's not beat around the bush any longer. Let's talk about this year at the Oscars. All right, the 91st Academy Awards. The nominees were Yalitza Aparicio in Roma, Glenn Close in The Wife, Olivia Colman in The Favorite, Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy in Can You Ever Forgive Me, with the winner being Olivia Colman. So before we break down these performances, Fritz, tell me about your overall thoughts on this lineup and, if anything maybe changed from the last time you saw these.
I don't know if it really changed, but I actually hadn't seen most of them since the Oscar year. I think the only one I rewatched was The Favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And the year was kind of blurry for me. I suppose maybe it is because when I think of that year, I always think about the fact that Bohemian Rhapsody and Green Book won like 7 Oscars together.
Yeah.
And this kind of always clouds my impression about this year. But luckily, I saw that the Best Actress lineup in this year is actually pretty great. I would say it's the best that we have talked about so far. I mean, 1949, we have 1949, we have Olivia de Havilland, of course, but then we also have Loretta Young, whatever that was. 89, I think, is good. We had different opinions about Jessica Tandy, but overall, there were good things in there. But this is for me the first year where I say, yeah, this is actually a pretty great lineup. Maybe not a lot of people talk about it as a pretty great lineup. Maybe because it's so focused on this two-person race that we had. You can also say it's so great that usually, but you again always see here that the Academy usually always goes for these kind of more male-centric movies, like our Green Book, our Bohemian Rhapsody, and here, in this case, you also have 3 women coming from Best Picture nominees, but they are all innocent. They are all coming from great movies. And the 2 movies that weren't nominated for Best Picture are still better than Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody. So
yeah, I agree.
No complaints here.
I do think The Wife would have been a better Best Picture winner than Green Book.
Yeah,
I said it.
I don't argue with that.
Yes. Well, this, of course, for me is a big one. I'm wearing black for the occasion because this is a funeral. No, but I like to call this year the incident. And it's a very touchy subject for me because I, of course, got very invested in this race to the point of obsession, quite frankly, because Glenn is my favorite actress, and to see her gain the momentum and get these precursors and give these amazing speeches and talking about how she's been in the business for 45 years. It really felt like a coronation moment for her, only to have it yanked away at the last minute. And to see her face and that flash of disappointment there, it really just felt cruel, honestly. And it was a reminder to me to not take these things too seriously or too personally and have some distance, right? And to have this thing that so many people love, which is this Olivia Colman win, this big upset win in a film people love, this incredible speech. It was hard for me for a long time to share in that joy because of how heartbroken I was for Glenn. So I'll probably say more on that later, but that's kind of the main sentiment that I have when I look back on this race. I've definitely reached an acceptance stage at this point, but to separate the lineup from the competition aspect, I agree. I really love this lineup, and I think it's a group of 5 good to great performances, each, having their own very compelling story and narrative outside of Glenn and Olivia too. We have Lady Gaga, this global superstar and making this big foray into film. We have Melissa McCarthy taking on a more dramatic role and really nailing it, I think. And we have Yalitza Aparicio, who is in her acting debut and, becoming the first Indigenous American actress to be recognized here. It's a very, really, really good group. And I hope this episode can be a celebration of that and not too much of a therapy session, perhaps, for me.
I mean, a lot of the feelings that you just said, I can completely relate to that. I mean, at the time, looking back, we will talk about this later, but looking back, we can say, yes, of course, Olivia Colman won, blah, 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 because of those things. But at the time, it really felt like this was Glenn's moment. And yeah, it was also, I mentioned it as my biggest heartbreaking loss at the time, because this was really the first time where I really was like, oh, I feel so bad for her. And
Yeah.
for me, Annette Bening losing to Hilary Swank the first time was very heartbreaking back then, because I was so obsessed with American Beauty at the time. And Annette Bening was like my first actressing crush.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Team Hilary Swank, so I've gotten over it. Obviously, Brokeback Mountain losing to Crash was a very hard moment that felt very difficult to not take it personal.
Yeah.
But I also got over that. And I'm also over Glenn Close losing by now. Time passes. But yeah, I remember I was really disappointed for her. And just in general, it seemed kind of cruel, yeah.
Yeah, definitely cruel. So, again, we'll get into that more later, but we have a lot to talk about here first. Shall we jump right into it?
Let's do it.
All right, well, we're starting off with Yalitza Aparicio in Roma. So, Yalitza Aparicio getting her first Oscar nomination for her acting debut. So, joining a select group of women to do that in this category. So, she was born in Oaxaca in Mexico. She had no formal acting training before she got her role in Roma. In fact, she was studying to be a teacher at the time of her casting. Her sister encouraged her to put herself out there for this open casting call, and she was chosen from a group of more than 3,000 people. And she only had a vague sense of what the film was going to be, outside of it being centered on this domestic workers experience. So Roma is written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and it tells a very personal, semi-autobiographical story for him about his childhood in the neighborhood of colonial Roma in Mexico City, honoring the maid who worked for his family. So Yalitza is playing Cleo, an indigenous woman who works for an upper middle class family in colonial Roma, which consists of a mother, Sophia, and a typically absent father and their 4 kids, plus Sophia's mother. So it's sort of a slice of life about her experiences as a maid, but also how her personal life complicates things after becoming pregnant by her boyfriend, and she fears she'll be fired. And also all this is against the backdrop of some political unrest in the area. So let's talk Yalitza Aparicio. Thoughts on her big debut performance here at Roma? Normally I would ask for your overall thoughts on the actress, but most people only experience with her is just this movie. So
yeah, first of all, it's Yalitza, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, if I pronounce it right, I'm sorry. German accent and yeah.
It's
No,
all
but
good.
Jalitza. Okay,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, as you said, I don't know anything else about her. I have checked her Wikipedia page. I've seen that she had done some other acting. I haven't seen any of this, to be honest. I have seen a trailer for one of her movies, but she only had like one line in that. So I can really only talk about Roma.
Hmm.
Roma itself is a movie I absolutely adore. Again, hadn't seen it in a long time, but I had remember how powerful it was, and rewatching it, I don't think my opinion hasn't changed. It's a kind of miracle for me that a movie like this was actually made, like black and white, not in English, very quiet, gives a lot of time and space to very ordinary daily activities, takes it takes a very soft tempo to get you into this world, but in my opinion, very successfully. It is a movie that is gorgeous to look at. The cinematography, the direction, which feels more like a choreography, that when you have this moving camera, so making sure that everybody always hits their mark, that all the action always continues. Just a gorgeous movie. And Jalitza, for me, that performance is a little miracle. It is, of course, a very quiet performance. I have listened to the Academy Queens podcast just a while ago about this year, and Joey is not a fan.
Yeah. Yep.
It's and I mean you can easily say it's her doing a lot of housework, a lot of chores, a lot of mopping, as he always says.
Yes.
But I feel that she has such a powerful screen presence. She has this kind of face. Yes, it is very quiet face. It doesn't seem to express a lot of emotions, but I have a feeling by the end of the movie that I really know Chloe as a Chloe, right? So
Cleo.
Cleo, sorry.
Yeah.
Cleo, that I remember really know her as a person, that I have experienced so much together with her. She can make you understand any of her actions, anything that is happening, even if she's just standing there and observing or just being a part of this household, being like kind of treated as a friend until she's no longer treated as a friend, until she is the maid again. And she makes all of this so understandable, her own way of behaving with the children, obviously liking them, but not being too close to them, understanding the kind of position she is in, finding herself then, of course, as you said, getting pregnant by her, I don't know, street fighter boyfriend.
Yes.
And yeah. And I mean, again, there's not so much actually happening in the movie. And even the big action parts that take so the historical background, it's like, I don't know, 10 minutes of the movie.
Hmm.
It is a very quiet story, but she carries, you could say it's probably a director's movie more than an actor's movie, but I still feel that her presence and what she is doing is essential to the movie being so successful as it is.
Yeah. I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there. I mean, first of all, I always love when we have a debut performance here because we don't have anything to measure it against as far as, what the actress does best. And it's just very easy to buy them as their character because you haven't really seen them before. And that's really how I feel about Jalitza here, too. I think she's very believable as Cleo in all of her, humbleness, her kind of shyness at times, but also her warmth and her love for this family, particularly the kids. And what I like is that even though she can often feel very passive and reactive, to me, it never feels like she's defined by just being the maid. I think it's easy to overlook what it is she's doing because of how subtle it is. But if you do really look at it, it just feels very fully formed and very accomplished for someone making their film debut. I know for some people, like you mentioned, like, Joey, and there's plenty of others too, that this movie just isn't on their wavelength. And I understand that completely. It does take its time and it can feel very low key and slice of life for people wanting something more exciting. But what I do appreciate about her performance, even as early as like those first 15 minutes or so, is just like watching her work and tending to everything and taking care of the kids. She doesn't complicate things or try to overemphasize how difficult the job can be. Like, she's very settled into this routine and she's very good at her job. And it allows her to even have these little moments with bonding with the kids and hang out with this one boy and like play dead with him. And I like her deadpan delivery there, being like, I like being dead. Like she's just very open and very easygoing with them, and she just has a very welcoming demeanor that it makes sense that the kids would love her, especially in comparison to their mother, who's a little more complicated and a little more distant at times, you know. And I just think the softness that she brings to the performance is really key. And it doesn't feel like she's pretending, really. Like she just has this natural affection for them, and she's just gotten used to them being like a family. And you really do just feel that, even if it's not overemphasized in an overly actor way.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's a very lived-in performance, so benefits very much from her being completely new to
Mm-hmm.
the medium. So she doesn't, as you said, she doesn't over complicate things or it constantly. Some actresses might have used the chance to hint at some things, to maybe hint at some unspoken past. But as you said, she's very matter of fact when she has, I don't know, there's this kid who constantly tells her, when I was old,
Yes.
I was this and this, which is kind of weird, but she doesn't really pay any attention to it. She just continues doing her what she's doing. She's like paying attention to him and talking to him, but at the same time continue doing her job in this very matter of fact way. And I also understand everybody who doesn't like, I mean, obviously, movies and performances, there's nothing so subjective
Mm-hmm.
as this. So I also understand everybody who says this is not my kind of movie. And yeah, it feels that she isn't doing a lot. I mean, a lot of times she's also distanced from the camera. Some of her big emotional moments, you don't even see her, you only hear her. So it's not like this movie is not designed as a showcase for her,
Right.
but she always adds a lot to what she's doing. And if she wouldn't be so effective and take you in as a viewer, then the later scenes that become a little bit bigger for her wouldn't be as effective.
I
It's a
agree.
very gradual process in
Yeah.
this performance.
Right. And also, it helps that also maybe that they did film in chronological order of the movie, you
Okay.
know? And I think you can really sort of feel her getting deeper and deeper as the film goes on. And she does get little moments like, you know, I love her facial reactions when she's with her boyfriend, when he's just fully naked and in the room with her and showing off his martial arts moves with the shower rod. And she kind of blushes a little bit, but also I think she's,
I think we all would look like this.
yes, definitely. Yeah, I remember first watching that and being like, oh, yeah. But also, I think she's kind of weirdly amused by that too, and his kind of like masculine posturing and all that. Like he's trying to show off to her, and she asks him if he practices every day and all this stuff. I think there is a hint in her performance of not being fully enamored with this like hyper masculine side of him, but there's also part of her that's just naturally going to respond to it. And I don't know, I just like that mix of energy because I think it speaks to how complicated this is for Cleo. And you know, she's eventually tells him she's pregnant and tries to get him to be involved, but he abandons her, of course, and how she eventually has to find the strength to go on from there as she deals with that. Plus being a worker, you know, feeling like a second class citizen sometimes as a indigenous woman in this environment. It's all about just reflecting this quiet strength. And so, like we are kind of saying, she's very understated in that, to the point that it can hardly even feel like she's acting if you're not really paying attention and, you know, willing to invest in what Quaron is trying to do.
Hmm. Yeah, but I mean, this very understated and quiet feels also so necessary for the character to work. I
Right.
mean, then later when she tells Marina's character, sorry,
Sophia.
what
Yeah.
Sophia, yeah, sorry, I'm
Hmm.
so bad with names. When she tells her that she's pregnant, it's again so quiet, and then of course she takes her to the hospital, and she just always follows along. So there's so much. There is a very, this very always never trying to take any attention. So
Right.
probably this very servant attitude,
Hmm.
like just being there and doing what is expected of her, but not drawing any attention to herself, not maybe not even speaking when she's not supposed to, showing. that she is, of course, scared that she's pregnant and her boyfriend has abandoned her. And the question is, what will happen to her? And again, it's not sh there's no overtly emotion from her side, but it just feels so authentic and it just feels so drawn into what she's doing. And I mean, there are these scenes when she is with her colleague and they are in their little room and they're doing these exercises, and you see how she's much more fun and much more relaxed in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fully intentional there. But yes, to speak to that, I definitely picked up on that on this watch is the fact that sometimes she does fade into the background, and some of the family interaction scenes where she's so passive and so non-reactive at times where like, you may wish that there was more variance there, but I can also see how having a bigger reaction like that when like the children are fighting, or when Sophia yells at her, for example, that Cleo reacting in a more animated way or loud way would risk her job and also just be very inconsistent with how we've come to know this person. So, yeah, it is very in keeping. It's very centered and very calm ultimately. And I think that also ties into the scene where she goes to visit her boyfriend in the field where they're being trained by this Professor Zovek and is like instructing them to close their eyes and lift up one foot and like lift their arm in the air, and everyone's kind of struggling, but she just kind of gets it and she's fully in balance right there, and she just again has that centered quality, this almost like meditative sense even through these difficult times that does just speak to her inner strength ultimately, even if you can't outwardly see it sometimes.
Did you also do the exercise?
I did not. I think I did it when I did a rewatch a few years ago. I was like, can I do this? And of course I fell. But yeah, did you?
I did, yeah. And I mean, I could do it, and I don't know. I was like, okay, that's not so difficult, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I have no idea what, but I don't know.
Fair
But I
enough.
just thought this, yeah, just to come back to the scene that you mentioned, that I like that scene very much when when the son is listening to the mother arguing, I think, with her mother in about their father, and she just doesn't know what to do.
Mm,
So she
right.
constantly tells him get away from there, but she doesn't grab him. And then, as you said, then she screams at him why she let him. And I think this so perfectly underlines how difficult it can be for her that on the one side she is kind of a part of the family, and they treat her sometimes like a part of the family, but on the other side she is the servant.
Right.
So she can sit with them and watch TV, but then at some point they will say, "Oh, I need something to drink. Get me." uh, prepare the food for somebody.
Hmm.
And of course, she cannot answer here in a family-like kind of way, but so then she is back to being the servant, and she is just a very quiet person. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just really like that scene, and it works so well. And yeah, the football scene is also so good that she again doesn't. I'm not sure if you even see her face when she is talking to her boyfriend. I think it's only the back of her head.
Yeah.
But it feels like by this point she has established her so much that we know what she is feeling and we know what she is thinking. And she just isn't the kind of woman who would go there and say, "Hey, this is your child. Come and take care of it, you bastard."
Right.
And he's of course also not the kind of guy who would stand for it. But you just understand from everyone she is interacting with why she is the person she is.
Yes. As much as we may want her to be like a Julia Roberts and Aaron Brockovich
Yeah.
and being like, listen, buddy.
Yes.
Which would be fun. But yeah, very
Yeah,
inconsistent
or like I
ultimately.
don't know, yeah, or a Sandra Bullock. You
Right.
threaten my child, you threaten me.
Oh my god. Wow. Maybe that's what some people feel is missing from this performance, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, more of the blind side.
Yeah, yeah. But I think towards the end we get the real dramatic high of her performance, which is her water breaking in the middle of this student protest, and the military response to that, and her just very anguished expressions to be in the middle of this incredibly stressful situation on top of what's actually going on around her. It's like, and her almost like doubling over in pain as she gets to the hospital, and they examine her and she can hardly even sort of catch her breath, and she's just crying in pain, and she gives birth and it ends up being stillborn, unfortunately. And just to see her kind of gasping out in pain and grief and almost disbelief, I find to be a very, very powerful scene that is just such an unimaginable situation unless you've been in it before. But yeah, I think she just plays the way that things change so quickly around her and her reacting to it still within the character, but it just feels very like improvisational sometimes. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's just like she just lives within whatever is happening around her. Like it just doesn't feel self-conscious, I guess, as a performance.
Yeah. I mean, the scene of her giving birth is probably, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a scene like this so directly
Yeah.
shown in a movie. And I have to say, I did not remember everything about Roma because, as I said, it's been a couple of years since I watched it, but I have never forgotten the scene.
Yeah.
And without wanting to get too much ahead now, for me, in this is the most heartbreaking and harrowing scene in this lineup.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is just is absolutely devastating, and this, of course, it is. I mean, this would always be a very moving scene, no matter who would play it. But the way she plays it and the way she has established the character so far is, yeah, just totally overwhelming moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the aftermath of that, even, I think, is so well done because we really linger on her, like in the scene where it's months later and she just seems very distant. And also, I even noticed on this watch how she walks down the stairs and kind of instinctually holds her belly at one point, which just broke my heart. And it's not in a way that calls attention to itself, but I thought that was just a great, subtle touch. And just that reserved quality just feels very different compared to the quietness she had before the birth. Like it feels like she's truly just withdrawn within herself and has fully checked out of life, essentially, even when she's on this little day trip with the family and she barely speaks a word and just looks like she's somewhere else in her mind.
Yeah, and I mean, that's for me the ingredient of a really great performance that you can sense as a viewer that her quietness from what happened from before is different from the quietness after without
Right.
her drawing any specific attention to it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so smart, you know? And then, of course, the beach scene where two of the kids nearly drown, but she goes out and saves them, even though she can't swim, is such a physical moment that really is kind of the catalyst for her to finally let go of this tension that she's been keeping in. And she admits, you know, as they're all embracing her and they're hugging each other on the beach, that she actually didn't want her baby to be born, which really took me aback when I first saw this. But as I've rewatched it, it makes sense to me, I think. And she plays it so beautifully to finally be able to exhale in that moment, you know. But it's like for Cleo as a character, she has already kind of has her family here ultimately, and she sort of made that choice for herself, and she's just content with this being her life in a way.
Hmm. And again, it's such a powerful knockout moment, but it's not a showy moment for her. There's
Right.
no big dramatic close up that
Mm-hmm.
many other directors would have given her. She's like blocked by the children that are hugging her and
Mm-hmm.
the mother who is hugging her, and we just hear her voice breaking, as you said, saying that she actually didn't want the child. And again, it's such a knockout scene that I also wasn't prepared for the first time I watched it, but as you said, it makes sense from her point of view, and it again helps you to understand the character even better. And at the end, again, I mean, of course, a lot happened for her in so there was a lot of growth with her, and when the movie ends, you're feeling that you have watched her grown in a certain way, you've watched her experience, and you feel that you've really gotten to know her.
Yeah. Even if it seems like they're just going to go back to a easy routine
Yeah.
after this, it still feels like, yeah, she's just been on this huge journey that a lot of other films don't usually invest in this type of character to show that kind of journey. So
Hmm.
I appreciate it for that reason. And I do
Yeah.
agree ultimately that it is more of a directorial effort than her performance necessarily, but I think she is perfectly calibrated within Cuarón's vision,
Yeah.
ultimately, that it is a
They
successful performance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they definitely work hand in hand. I don't
Yeah.
think that his direction would work so well if her performance wasn't so perfectly calculated to what he is doing.
Hmm.
And a performance like hers wouldn't, I mean, a performance like hers wouldn't certainly work in a movie like The Favorite. So it
Right.
really needs a very specific frame to work. But of
Hmm.
course, that's true for every performance. And in this specific frame, it works perfectly.
Yeah. Well, having said that, I would love to see Yalitza Aparicio get a role that is something that could be in The Favorite and
Yeah,
play with
I
that
mean,
frequency, you know?
yeah, would be so nice to see what else she can do
Yeah,
and also just I don't know, just get Hollywood, get your shit together and get her back.
I
Give her
know.
give her something to do.
Yeah, it's been 6 years and it feels
Yeah.
like Hollywood either she doesn't really want to do the Hollywood thing or, they just don't really know what to do with her, which is sad.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of sad, let's move on to our next nominee, shall we? It's the big one.
We shall. It feels kind of wrong to go in alphabetical order,
I
but
know.
yes, we shall.
Yes, gotta be consistent. All right, here we go. Glenn Close in The Wife. Okay, Glenn Close getting her seventh Oscar nomination, her fourth in lead. This is 7 years after Albert Nobbs. So, in between these two nominations, she's in quite a few films, but mostly supporting roles in movies that didn't really hit very well. But one of her biggest hits was Guardians of the Galaxy, playing a pretty small but crucial role in that. But a lot of time was spent on the stage in productions of The Pirates of Penzance, A Delicate Balance, and most notably Sunset Boulevard, reprising her Tony-winning performance as Norma Desmond in 2017, for which she got rave reviews. And then later in 2017 is when The Wife premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, and Sony Pictures Classics picked it up and premiered it a year later here in 2018. So, The Wife is an adaptation of the novel by Meg Wolitzer, directed by Bjorn Runge and written by Jane Anderson. The film follows a couple, Joan and Joe Castleman, played by Glenn Close and Jonathan Pryce, as they hear word that Joe, a famous novelist, has won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and they go on a trip to Stockholm to accept the prize. And it becomes clear over time that Joan is unsettled by something, kind of irritable, and not entirely happy about all this. And we gradually learn that Joan was actually very intimately involved in the writing of her husband's novels, which she has done after being discouraged by the publishing industry that didn't take female writers seriously when she was younger. And so it eventually becomes too much for her to bear, and she confronts her husband for what she feels is a lack of respect. So, here we go. Tell me your thoughts on the great Glenn Close overall and her performance here in The Wife.
I mean, obviously, yes, it is the great Glenn Close. No complaints here. It's kind of difficult. I have so many notes on Glenn Close and The Wife, and they are so out of order. It's probably very difficult for me to say all of this. I don't know when and how I was introduced to her.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't remember. I don't even know which kind of movie it could have been, but obviously I mean, if we just talk about Dangerous Liaisons and Fatal Attraction, of course, her two big ones, then she is already a living legend. She is a very unique actress for me. She has this very strong screen presence that is very unique to her. I know this sounds like a very stupid thing to say, this kind of masculine quality, and I don't want to
Yeah.
say it in a way that enforces like gender stereotypes to say that because she is a strong screen presence, she is a masculine screen presence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about this expression because she kind of feels for me like similar to Glenda Jackson in some ways, and I know that back in the 70s, this was how they described her because of course, that's how you describe an actress who is dominant and strong. Of course, you say, oh, she's like a man.
Right.
And again, I don't mean this negatively. It's just that she has this very she is so dominant, and this of course works very well in her best parts. And she can be very big and campy in a fun way, like she can do 101 Dalmatians without breaking into a sweat. She can do Fatal Attraction and be over the top without becoming ridiculous. But then, of course, she can be also very internal and withdrawn, like in Dangerous Liaisons, and of course in The Wife.
Mm-hmm.
And she can express a lot of feelings behind her face, which is, of course, something the best can do, but not all actresses can do, and which, of course, is asked of her in The Wife. The Wife itself, I mean, we just said, yeah, I think it is probably better than like something like Green Book or Bohemian Rhapsody. I still would not say it's a great movie per
Yeah.
se. I think it suffers from the fact it wants to say a lot and it wants to comment on a lot, but I don't feel that it is as successful as it wants to be. While watching this movie, I thought this would be a great two-character stage play,
Mm.
just the wife and the husband.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Christian Slater, I don't know why he's in the movie, that whiny son
Oh God.
who I constantly want to hit over the head with something. I'm like, you got, you're a grown-up man. Can you please stop being such a, yeah.
I know.
And I don't know, the flashbacks also, they are not working as well as they should.
Yeah.
I feel like if they hadn't done the flashbacks and just explained everything via dialogue, it would have been much better because the flashbacks are so, if the movie was like a steak, I would say, yes, I like it medium, but this is raw. And
Sure.
I mean, you have this young woman who wants to become an author, and then the Downton Abbey woman shows up and tells her, "Oh, there will never be a female writer." And I mean, I don't want to dismiss her experience because, yes, of course, women have it much more difficult in professions to get ahead compared to men. But it's just so quickly done, and it's like, okay, so Downton Abbey woman has told to me I will never be a writer, so I just write the stuff for my husband. And it just I know we later have a question about which movie deserves like a prequel,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel if the flashbacks would make a very good movie on their own. I mean, Glenn is obviously the most important part of this movie, and it's just that the movie around her isn't as intrigued with her performance as it should be, and isn't giving her as much to do as it should, even though she does a lot with it. So it's a very not probably not the best written part in this lineup, but she does a lot with it. And what also I think might be difficult for her is while rewatching this movie, I thought this is the kind of movie you really need to watch twice. And the question is how many people watch The Wife twice, if we're being
Or
completely
watched it at
honest.
all.
Yeah, because I think when you know what happens and when you know the dynamics between these characters, it becomes much more interesting. Like right away at the beginning, when they are jumping on the bed and he's like, I won the Nobel. And you just understand how much they both have internalized this construct that they have built, that even when they are together, only the two of them, they still keep up the facade. And you far better understand what is going on with her and what she is thinking and experienced. Then the movie becomes much better than just gradually learning the truth because I mean, right away in the beginning, you have so many different facial expressions of her, like when she's on the telephone, and this is again what she does so well. She can be in this moment. She can when the guy from Stockholm tells her, "Oh, he has won the Nobel Prize, and you must take very good care of him because there will now be a lot of reporters coming and blah blah blah." And her face can you can read her face as both happy and disappointed, and it's just so much more interesting if you already know the whole backstory that they are having.
Yeah.
Sorry, I now just said a lot. I think people want to hear what you have to say about
No,
Glenn Close
I
and the
love it.
wife.
I love whenever I hear anyone praising Glenn Close. So you're all good. Yes, I mean it would come as no surprise to anyone that I love Glenn and the wife, and as a fan, I was highly anticipating this throughout the year, ever since she got those good reviews at Toronto the previous year. And yes, for whatever you want to say about the film, definitely the weakest of this particular bunch, I would say. But her performance, I do think, completely carries it and makes it worth watching. I just think she really burrows so deeply into this role and with such precision and really builds to that explosive moment in the end. I think with the skill that only a true veteran actress like her can. And she says so much with her face and especially her eyes. This reminds me a little bit of that like Fatal Attraction, Dangerous Liaisons, Glenn, where it's really about this woman who is in a very complicated situation and trying to have things go her way and sort of trying to manipulate the situation in a way that makes her happy, but is coming up against sexism and this very patriarchal society that tends to discount women like her. But as opposed to those earlier works, she is much more restrained here. And it's like, she's someone who has had this secret life for many decades as her husband's ghostwriter, essentially, and gotten zero credit for it. And what does that do to a person? I think it helps that she is just really great casting ultimately, too, for something like this, because she can play the subtleties of being like this New England woman who knows how to put up a front, of being happy and sociable at parties and all that, but also having that sort of storm inside her that's sort of begging to come out ultimately. And she's channeling that through her writing, I think. But now it's like they're approaching their twilight years here and they've had this nice life together. But what does she really have to show for it ultimately? Like, yes, she knows the truth, obviously, but she's had to live two lives essentially. And I think after a while it just becomes exhausting, if not totally just dispiriting. And I think she channels all that rage, all that repressed emotion over decades into those little glances she gives at him and her snide little comments she makes, and just the shattered dreams ultimately. I think it's all of that is here. And I agree that the film isn't always worthy of the kind of performance that she's giving ultimately, but I think the beauty is that you can still see that even with how weak the film is.
Yeah, and totally agree that her performance is so strong because she is displaying this kind of unhappiness and probably bitterness without making it too obvious. I mean,
Yeah.
again, a lot of actresses could have overdone it, but I think she perfectly walks this line,
Mm-hmm.
which probably a lot of people can understand. I mean, obviously, my husband has never published books that I've written or things like this, but you, of course, have sometimes a situation where you're annoyed with your partner and
Mm-hmm.
you want to show that you are annoyed, but at the same time, you don't want to make it too obvious because you don't want to make a fuss about it.
Right.
And this is what I think she does so perfectly, like in the plane when they are going there, when they are being met in Stockholm by this woman who's basically telling, "Oh, why your husband, the writer, is doing all the stuff. I take you on a shopping tree because that is what we girlies do."
Right.
And you can sense the way she is talking to anybody. She's always friendly. She's always like, "Yes, of course, I support my husband." But you can sense there is a kind of, she wants at the same time to show, I'm really pissed off, but I don't want to draw attention to it and I don't want to make it too obvious because that's not what I can do.
Right.
But you sense that there is an urge in her to make it obvious to her husband. And I think the fact that he doesn't is probably even more upsetting to her. I mean, at some point, he asks her why she's so upset, and he immediately thinks it is because he was flirting with this reporter. So in his mind, he isn't even connecting the dots. There's never a moment in him where he's like, I'm receiving a Nobel Prize for all the books that my wife has essentially written, but we have so become so integrated into this lie that we have built that I am not even thinking that maybe she is upset about the whole situation. I
Right.
mean, if this movie was any better, or if this movie was better in general, because in a way, this movie is like where the entire Best Actress category is leading to. I mean, how many times did you have What If There Was a Wife?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
in
right.
those cases, it always is the wife. It always is the supportive wife. And this movie kind of takes this concept and turns it around and shows, okay, but what if the wife is not only the supportive wife, but actually the wife who does all of this? I mean, there are moments in the movie
Right.
where she's actually saying to him, don't make me look like the long-suffering wife, or don't
Mm-hmm.
make me look like a victim.
Yeah.
She's actually saying this to him, and there is a lot in this movie that is very interesting, and it is very interesting to consider and to analyze more deeply. And again, if this movie was any better, I think there would be a much more appreciation for what Glenn is doing and for what the movie itself is doing,
Yeah.
especially in connection to the entire Best Actress category and the kind of characters we have seen so far.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, sometimes the movie, I don't know, there's even a scene, I think, when Jonathan Pryce tells the son about a book he has written, and he's like, and he says to him, "Oh, the suffering wife who just accepts everything that is happening to her." That is such a cliche. And I don't think that the movie is good enough to actually make this kind of ironic statement.
Right.
So there are a lot of ups and downs with the movie, but her performance always perfectly captures the essence of it and what it wants to say.
I agree. Yeah. And I noticed also on this rewatch so many amazing details to speak to your point about watching it multiple times of how just incrementally she builds that resentment toward him. Like that early scene at this party to celebrate the Nobel Prize and her little glances at him as he's trying to charm people and take credit for everything. And she withholds so much of her own feelings, enough to go undetected by the other people at this party. But we definitely see the little face cracks and the forced smiles and that scene on the plane where she's, sort of peering out over her glasses, almost rolling her eyes when he's flirting with the flight attendant. Like she kind of knows his game, and they have definitely been through this before with him with other women, and it's just exhausting to her. I think just how predictable he is ultimately. Like he is just not on her level ultimately, even if she may have felt that way earlier in their relationship. And she makes these little snippy comments throughout the trip about like him taking his medication or like not overextending himself. Like she is just so perceptive and so precise ultimately that it's just like it becomes this thing of actually something that Glenn talked about in interviews at the time of like really stressing the importance to her of showing why she stayed with him, like why she didn't just leave him. And she felt like it was important for the audience to understand why. And I do think we do, at least I do, through the way that she plays off of him and how they do have their little moments that feel like, they still have that connection that they had from so long ago. But also it's that idea of like she found this system that works for her and they created this life together. And I think it's difficult to disrupt that ultimately after she's been doing it for God knows how long, decades and decades. So yeah, I understand that just in the way that she expresses herself through Joan, why she would stay with him.
Yes, and I like it so much that she doesn't play it as a woman who is maybe because of what is happening is maybe experiencing some kind of change. Also, she probably does, but she doesn't show her as a woman whose journey is currently beginning, but as a woman where you sense this journey has begun a long time ago,
Yeah.
and this is just the moment that we are turning in to begin to observe it. And again, not because of the flashbacks, but simply because the way she is interacting with him. And yeah, the way what you just said, the way she is like telling him take his pills and things like this. It sometimes feels that she's doing this out of spite, that she is like, you want me to be the supportive wife, so I will be
Yeah.
the damn supportive wife. And again, like maybe this way expressing her rage so
Mm-hmm.
that she obviously cannot talk about this too open. And this is again where I think the movie is very interesting that even in those scenes where they are together, they are never saying, "Oh, I wrote these books," and he's like, "Yeah, you wrote those books, but we have to keep it up." But they have, yeah, this is just their life, and this makes it also easy to understand why she has stayed with him for so long because they have just totally accepted what is going on. And of
Yeah.
course, we even later learn that he doesn't even see it this way, that he is more like you are more like an editor and those were my ideas and that he
Mm.
apparently doesn't even understand what his in quote own books are about.
Yeah, I know. It's a fascinating dynamic because it also just feels in a way like almost like a mother role to him at times of just like he is just not capable of getting to a certain point and she again has to keep reminding him of certain things and attending to him all the time. So you can get why there's a lot of rage there. And when they go to that other reception, that just plastic smile she has is so great and heartbreaking ultimately because it's like the Dangerous Liaisons quote where it's just like saying she tries to look cheerful while secretly sticking a fork into the back of her hand. That's very much the energy she's giving as he's just like stumbling through these anecdotes at these parties and casually talking to this like scientist couple that they both have the same profession. And he's like, well, my wife doesn't write, thank God. And it would be very tempting for her, I think, in that moment to have a more obvious reaction to that. But I love the way that she just powers through and just like, extends her hand out to introduce herself. And I think that lack of a real reaction is so much more painful because she's just so used to this by now. Same thing when they're in the limo and she tells him not to bother thanking him in his acceptance speech because she doesn't want to be seen as a long-suffering wife, like you mentioned. It's like she would rather just be excluded from this whole narrative than given this almost condescending little acknowledgement of how patient his wife is. Like she doesn't want to hear it. And like he's kind of arguing with her about that and she's just like, whatever, do what you need to do. All these little quick dismissive comments or just like humiliations. I think they're just so well done how she reacts to them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we always want, when we see a movie and we see a performance, we always want to see these kind of little moments where the character maybe slips or where the character shows, oh, I'm saying this, but I'm actually thinking something else. And
Right.
of course, this is what we want when we observe performances, but she plays it more like how it would be in real life. Then in real life, she wouldn't give like when he says, "Oh, my wife doesn't write." In real life, she wouldn't show a visible reaction. She would
Right.
just go on and just continue to suppress the rage that she feels inside, and let it out later, as she then does at some moment, even though she maybe wasn't even prepared to let it out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the close up that she then has at the speech is, of course, the one of those great Glenn close up moments, and
Yes.
that yeah, that she can do so well. And again, it's so understandable because as you said, she doesn't want to be seen as this kind of soft wife. And by the way his speech, I mean, he probably thinks he is doing something nice for her by saying, "Oh, she should actually have this award." But of course,
Yeah.
the audience, they don't think she should have this award because she's actually the great writer and the great genius in the family. No, she should have the award because, they probably think she brings him tea, she leaves him alone when he has to write, she
Mm-hmm.
brings him his slippers. He essentially, with his thank you speech, he puts her in this role that she just doesn't want to be in because I mean, I don't know. Did you see The Bad and the Beautiful?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking, this is probably the way Gloria Graham's character, this is probably the way people think the wife of a writer is, that she's
Yeah.
constantly coming in and like disturbing him, and but then she's letting him, and that this is, this kind of, but then she goes shopping and things like this.
Right.
But of course, this is not what she does, and and I mean, it must hurt to hear all this praise, to hear him being described as one of the great voices of the century and one of the great writers of the century, and then hearing him say, "Oh, you should have this for all the support you give me." Yeah,
Right.
it is a probably unbearable situation. It would be a very difficult situation for anyone.
Absolutely. And that's why you are fully on her side when she ultimately does snap at him, which she does a few times. The first one is when she has come back from this meeting with the Christian Slater character who's kind of prodding her for information about their life. And Joe accuses her of smoking and getting drunk. And then she sees this walnut, I think, in his pants pocket, which she knows to be his kind of trademark way of wooing women such as herself all those years ago. And now she kind of has something to really nail him on in terms of like getting out that rage. And she just unloads all of that repressed anger on him. And there's just such a power in Glenn's voice that really resonates. It is very theatrical in a way, but still grounded in a way. I think she just conveys that she's just given up her whole claim to fame for him and written all his novels and given him this amazing life. And the least he can do is be loyal to her in return. And he can't even do that because he is a man child still, even at
Yeah.
this age.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Glenn does have one of the great voices
Yeah.
on the screen, and there's this dark quality to it that is so good, especially when she gets angry. And I mean, when she has her second big outburst, I mean, she's literally throwing books around.
Yeah.
And I mean, this could be so big. I mean, if this was made in the 50s, this would be Susan Hayward, and she would go for it, really go for it.
Yeah.
Um, but what Glenn does is never over the top. As I said, she throws books. She is like, "Oh, I'm turning your what I don't know, what does she say? I'm turning your affairs into literally gold."
Hmm.
And then he's of course like, "Oh, this book wasn't about me." And the way she says, "Oh, it's obvious on every page."
Mm.
she just
Killer.
has this kind of voice. Yeah, she just has this kind of voice where even if she isn't raising it, she can very precisely hit the target.
Absolutely. I love it so much. And obviously, there's also this confrontation with their son who goes to them on the big night and having, talked to the Christian Slater character, he's revealed to him that Joan did write all of Joe's books ultimately. And it's fascinating to see her sort of navigate her way through that because she is so used to providing that distance, I think, that it's easy for her to deny it, even to their son. And she does a great job of selling that to him. But it's like the more he persists, the harder it is for her to really keep that resolve. And she's like, I can't make you believe me. It's up to you what you believe. And it's this
Mhm.
slight sliver of like not as convincing as what came before. And I think that guilt is starting to creep in for her and just the exhaustion of having to maintain this lie. It just becomes too much for her. And then I think everything from there on out, she's just so in the pocket, like, yeah, her quietly seething through this ceremony and him saying it belongs to her in his speech, and just the way that really she plays that in her face. Because it's like she thought she could get through this, but it just becomes too much for her to bear. And like that was the final straw, and she just needs to leave. And I'm like, I'm with you, girl. Like, I get it.
Totally. And yeah, and when she also the way she says to it's probably the king when she says to him, "I'm a kingmaker."
I am a
Um,
kingmaker.
yeah,
Yes.
I am a kingmaker. It's again, no, it's I mean, it's probably a very theatrical line, but again, it just shows how she is kind of over this. So
Hmm.
she doesn't want to say, I'm the supportive wife, obviously, but she also doesn't want to say, I write all this stuff.
Right.
So she basically says it in her own way, but again, of course, nobody takes her seriously.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also like it at the end. I mean, you never get the feeling that she is blaming him. So she always knows, okay, no, I played a role in this too. So this was my decision to do it like this. But now I'm just fed up with it. So
Hmm.
you can sense that even till the end that she does love him in a way,
Right.
but it just becomes too much for her.
Right. Yeah. That big argument at the end, I think, is such an electrifying moment. I remember seeing it in the theater and being like, holy shit, just like the intensity that she brings to it. And again, the resonance in her voice and the way it builds to that line about her anger of him telling the people at the party that his wife doesn't write
Right.
is so powerful for me because she's just like expelling all of those hurt feelings on her absolute ass of a husband. And she's deciding she is done with it. Because, yeah, like I also think there may be a little bit of guilt there in a way of feeling like, yes, she's gotten her writing out there through him, but so much of her life has been a lie. And she's decided she can't bury that anymore. And she needs to go out and sort of find her own path. So, yeah, I just have watched that scene many times, as you can imagine.
I mean, we love a woman recognizing what she is worth and
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
choosing her own path. And yeah, I mean, of course, it is a shitty marriage. It is a shitty situation to be in, but of course, at some point, you want recognition for what you do. I mean, it's just natural
Hmm.
that it must hurt to see somebody get so not just a little bit of praise, but obviously it's the Nobel Prize. Your wife who just won the Nobel Prize. And yeah, I mean, there comes a moment when you want to be recognized for the work that you do, and
Hmm.
it's essentially it is impossible for her. And I mean, at the end, we know that she isn't planning to get the kind of recognition she deserves. But yeah, it must hurt
Oh,
to
yes.
do all this great work and know that nobody will actually ever really know about it.
Hmm. I know. Yeah, the ending with her on the plane, and essentially she is turning the page on Joe, you could say. um, yes, it's a little cheesy, but I do think she brings the right sort of bittersweet energy to that of definitely grieving because she's been with this man for decades and decades, but also in a way being ready to move forward, having finally expressed what she's needed to express for so long. So I think it ends in a powerful way. I don't know why the film ends on a shot of the airplane rather than her face in close-up. Mind-boggling to me, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Just
know. I
saying.
mean, the last scene on the plane. I mean, it's also like, how likely is it that you have the same stewardess on your flight
Yes.
from the U to Stockholm and back?
I don't know if you remember
Uh,
me from last time.
yes.
Yes. I
I am
just,
the only stewardess working on this airline.
yes.
Um, I don't know. The last scene, again, her voice does a lot. I just wish
Yeah.
this is the only scene where I just wish there had been a little bit more from her side. It just feels like he died and okay. So I mean, I understand that her grief is very complicated. Maybe it's also because the awful son is there again, and he is also like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Just feels a little bit okay. I don't know. So much happened, even when she's talking to Christian Slater again. Just feels there would be a little bit more in this ending scene, but I understand why she played it the way she did, and it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt her performance in any way. It just maybe there could have been a little bit more, but
Mhm.
it's a good ending for her. And yes, then we have the airplane commercial, and then it's over.
I just, it baffles me to this day that we have just like, it looks like a CGI plane going through the sky. What a way to end this movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Imagine it would just have exploded. What an ending that would have been.
And it turns out this was the plane from Lost, and they're going to do a plane crash. Anyway, that's the wife. We may not love the movie, but I do think her performance, it just speaks to the power of it for me that she got as far as she did in the awards season and got all those awards in the end, even if it wasn't the big one, that she was able to rise above and get all those nominations, even with how not so great the movie is.
Yeah. I mean, we probably talk about the reception and
Yeah.
things like this later when we talk about the Oscars.
Yeah. So that's that. More on
That's
my
what.
feelings of what actually happened later. Yes.
Yes.
But actually, for now, this is our last Glenn leading nomination, I should mention, too. So a bit of an end of an era for that. Hopefully, not the full end, but
No, we say she will be back.
she'll be back. I believe in
She'll
her.
be back.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next nominee, Lady Gaga in A Star is Born. Okay. So Lady Gaga is getting her first Oscar nomination for acting here, but it's not her first nomination overall. She was previously nominated in 2015 for co-writing the Diane Warren song Till It Happens to You. This year, she not only has this nomination, but she wins Best Original Song for Shallow from A Star is Born. So she does walk away from this ceremony an Oscar winner, even if not in this category. So much to explore with Gaga. She was born Stephanie Germanotta in New York City. She felt like a bit of an outcast growing up, and she developed a love of music from very early on, as well as a love of theater, appearing in some high school plays. She went to Tisch at NYU, and she started exploring a music career in the mid-2000s, performing in New York. Fast forward to 2008, and she released her debut album, The Fame, and developed a persona as a slightly avant-garde lover of eccentric outfits, inspired by David Bowie and Queen and Madonna. And she hit big pretty quickly with songs like Just Dance and Poker Face, and she was heralded for her artistry in her music videos and her live appearances. So she's winning Grammys, she's touring all over the world, and really becoming one of the biggest pop stars of the 21st century, which lasts pretty much through the mid-2010s. And she starts exploring other ventures, including a starring role on American Horror Story Hotel in 2015, for which she won a Golden Globe. Never forget.
Yeah.
She also made a handful of cameos and small performances in films like Machete Kills and Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, but none of them were really huge challenges. And then here comes A Star is Born in 2018, which is her first big leading role in a film. There had been many attempts to launch A Star is Born for this generation with loads of names, including a version with Beyonce, which was supposed to be directed by Clint Eastwood, but that fell through. Others in the mix, while Clint was still involved, include Esperanza Spalding, Selena Gomez, Kesha, Demi Lovato, Jennifer Lopez, Rihanna, Shakira, and Janelle Monáe. So a lot of the main pop girls in the 2010s, basically. So when Bradley Cooper got involved and he was attached to direct and star, Beyonce was still in the mix, but eventually did leave. That's when he met Gaga, and they really hit it off. So here we are. So, like all versions of A Star is Born, we've got a male entertainer who's past his prime, falling in love with a female artist who has a meteoric rise to fame. This time, it's centered around a country singer, Jackson Maine, played by Bradley Cooper, who meets this amateur singer, Allie, Lady Gaga, at a drag bar, and they enter a whirlwind romance. And after Jackson invites Allie to perform with him on stage, her life changes pretty much overnight, and she goes on the path to becoming a star. Meanwhile, Jackson is dealing with alcoholism and tinnitus and trauma from his personal demons, which has a negative impact on Allie's life and her career. So, let's talk Lady Gaga. Thoughts on Gaga overall as an artist overall, even beyond acting, and her performance in this fourth iteration of A Star is Born, and fifth if you count What Price Hollywood.
So I have to be completely honest. I am not a big music person, so I don't know a lot about Lady Gaga. I mean, of course, I know the songs that play on the radio and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like this, but I have never actively like, okay, this is Lady Gaga's new album. I have to listen to it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not because I don't like Lady Gaga. It's just basically my attitude to music in general. So I just wait what's brought to me in a way
Fair
like
enough.
this. So I just what I hear on the radio and stuff like this. So
Mm-hmm.
cannot say too much. I mean, of course, I know that she won the Golden Globe. I mean, who can forget Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
But somehow I always thought this was like her first acting ever. So when I went back to Wikipedia, I was like, oh no, right, she did some other stuff. So I cannot really comment on her as an actress in general or a musician in general, but of course we can talk about her performance.
Mm-hmm.
A Star is Born, yeah, I remember when this like was made, when this came out, or when there were talk about this, there was a lot of okay, another A Star is Born. But to be honest, I think this is really one of the best stories that you can remake again and again. Because you obviously have the changes in the entertainment industry. I mean, you can see from the movies themselves how they change from just about Hollywood, then the switch to Hollywood, but also singing, then this change to completely singing, and there are always very interesting ways from gender dynamics and stardom how you can update this particular story. So I was quite happy when this was remade. I might actually say, I don't know if this is a dangerous thing to say, but I might actually say this is my favorite A Star is Born movie.
Wow.
I would say, yeah, Bradley Cooper was robbed for
Mm-hmm.
Best Director nomination, especially when you think about I think Green Book probably was nominated for Best Director, I would assume.
I don't think so. I don't
Was
think
it
it
not?
was. No. I mean, Adam
Well,
McKay was for Vice. I don't know if I feel about that.
okay.
But
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
I would definitely take Bradley Cooper there. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Lady Gaga in general as an actress, I mean, she obviously is someone who takes her craft very seriously in
Oh,
acting. I mean,
yes.
you can say this might be a bit comical at some points, but I mean, I like it that she takes it seriously and that she is so dedicated to it. And you sense this in a lot of scenes of A Star is Born, that she is very serious about acting and that she is very yeah, very trying to get into the character, into the moment. Sometimes works in a lot of moments, sometimes maybe not as much, but yeah, we can talk about this in detail. In general, what I want to say right away is usually I want this might be a bit of prejudice on my part. I want my Best Actress nominees to be the standout of their movie. So I want to see the movie just for them.
Yeah.
Like even when you have back then, when you have your Greer Garsons and your, I don't know, I know you're not the biggest fan, but even then, yeah, I mean, you watch Blossoms in the Dust because you want to watch Greer Garson doing Blossoms in the Dust. You don't watch it for Walter Pigeon.
Yeah.
And so what makes it a little bit difficult for Lady Gaga with me is that I think Bradley Cooper is so awesome and so outstanding in A Star is Born. This is for me an absolutely fantastic performance. I cannot believe that he lost to whatever that was that he lost to. Again, might be a dangerous thing to say, but for me, Bradley Cooper gives the best performance in the entire A Star is Born movies.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what this means
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Um, So this makes it a little bit difficult for me. And in general, I find it always funny that because of the Judy Garland version, we tend to think of A Star is Born as like this movie focused on a woman getting her way to the top, which of course it is. But for me, three of the movies are for me more dominated by the male actors. So I think the 37 version, that's for me Frederick March's movie.
Hmm.
I hope you know what I did for you. Just for you, I rewatched the Streisand version
Oh my
just
God.
to, yeah, just for you.
You didn't have to do that.
Just thought,
Oh
okay,
man.
I want to be completely prepared.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, again, I mean, Chris Christopherson is not given a lot, but still better than Streisand. And yeah, Bradley Cooper walks away with this one. And even the 54 version, while I think Judy Garland is, of course, the big shining star of this, James Mason is pretty fantastic himself, and it's not like
Hmm.
she overshadows him. So maybe it's just that I always feel that the character who is just from an acting point of view, I always think that the character who is on the downwards and whose life is basically whose entire career is going downhill, it feels always a little bit more interesting than the one who's going
Yeah.
up.
Hmm.
I mean, even in the Judy Garland version, I think her best moments are always those when she is faced with what her husband is experiencing. And yeah, okay, but this was a lot about the other Stars Born movies. Um, in regards to Lady Gaga, yeah, but it is still a great performance. I mean, yes, even if Bradley Cooper overshadows her, in my opinion, it is still a great performance in itself. She never feels like she is entirely, obviously, she isn't new to acting, but it also doesn't feel like she is still finding her way. She seems very settled into what she wants to do. I'm not the biggest fan of her dressing room scene. It seems for me a little bit too, oh yeah, I'm trying to be very actually here, but I like the scene later when they are in the bar and it feels very natural the way they are constantly talking to each other and sometimes one is speaking while the other one is speaking.
Yeah.
And it just feels that it's very in the moment. And I also like that she doesn't enter it in a very overly dramatic way. So she is not singing a standard pop song, but she has her what does she singing?
La
Edith
Vie en
Piaf,
Rose. Yeah.
La Vie en Rose, yeah.
Hmm.
Which she does obviously very well. And it because she is a very unique performer and she isn't the kind of performer where you see her and you're immediately like, oh wow, that's a star. But she gradually, so at least for me, okay, maybe it's kind of how everybody interprets it, but for me, she gradually shows herself to be capable of being a star,
Yeah.
which is also what for me makes this movie so interesting. I mean, when
Hmm.
you watch like Judy Garland obviously sing The Man That Got Away, there's no way that she is not destined to be
Right.
a big star. And in the case of Lady Gaga, I feel that the movie ta makes it more slow and gives her the time to really get there.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And for me, I come at this quite differently because I am a full Gaga stan, dating all the way back to that first album. I've seen her in concert. I have all of her albums on vinyl. Her voice, I think, is just out of this world, especially when she belts. And I just really just connected to how much she loves pop music and her advocacy for the LGBT community. You know, there's so much we could talk about with her that just makes her a remarkable artist for me. And I was cautiously optimistic about A Star is Born because I had seen her on American Horror Story Hotel and she was fine in it, but not exactly revelatory necessarily. But I was majorly hyped for A Star is Born, especially after that first trailer came out, which I probably watched like 75 times. Just such a well put together trailer. And when I first saw the movie, I think it mostly lived up to the hype. She is really good here. The problem, like you said, is that Bradley outshines her ultimately, and it's sort of by design because he just gets the stronger dramatic arc, like you said, and the more emotional scenes. So it does, for me, feel the most like the male character story here than in any of the other iterations of A Star is Born. That's how I feel. And I think she holds her own and does a really good job, especially considering this is her first leading role in a film. Some people say she's playing herself. She has definitely distanced herself from that feeling. maybe a little bit towards the end where she's become like a full-blown pop star. But I do think she nails the emotional component of the story, and her chemistry with Bradley, I think, is really, really strong, which helps you really invest in the story. And it also just helps for me that her singing is just phenomenal, like some of the best vocals in her career, honestly. So I really like her a lot. Is it an incredible performance? Maybe not necessarily, but I think she proved a lot of people wrong, especially in the first half of the film, which is, for me, much better than the second half in terms of what she's given because of how natural she feels often on screen.
Agree with everything you said. I also think that she is more interesting in the first half, probably because it also pairs. I mean, she obviously has most of her scenes with Bradley Cooper, but I feel that in the second half, when she turns into this pop star, that she kind of breaks into her own and has more scenes on her own or with her manager, and they never feel as engaging as they do as when she is paired with Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
Her vocals, yeah, obviously no complaints. I mean, Shallow, the scene also in the movie deserves every kind of re deserves all the praise it has. This is an iconic moment. And yeah, totally agreed when the trailer came out. This is a very great trailer. And I remember on film Twitter back then, everybody was like, "Where were you when Lady Gaga changed the key?"
Yes. That battle
Yeah,
cry.
yeah, instantly iconic.
Hmm.
Yes, and I mean, if she does play herself, I really cannot comment on this, but I don't have the feeling, especially in the first half of the movie, when I see her at home with her father or just the relationship to Bradley Cooper's character beginning, I don't have the feeling that I never, maybe it's because I don't know Lady Gaga as an artist so well, but I never have the feeling that I'm watching Lady Gaga.
Hmm.
So in this way, for me, she definitely achieved the goal of becoming the character that she is in the story. So I don't like in the 76 version, it's definitely always Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I would also say not so great.
Hmm.
Yeah, so for Lady Gaga, as you said, it's maybe not the greatest performance of all time, especially because I think it loses a little bit in the second half,
Hmm.
but she does everything she's supposed to do. So in this from this perspective, no complaints.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think her first scene in the, like, I think it's in the bathroom stall where she's like breaking up with her boyfriend, I think, and just yelling out in frustration. And she's told to take out the trash on her way out. A preview of her taking out the trash in House of Gucci, by the way. She has that kind of classic working girl New Yorker type of energy in a way, which is pretty easy to buy into. They're not in New York, but you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
definitely see her tapping into those early days of her just being that hustler before she became Gaga. And I think that works well because she just has, what I definitely noticed on this watch is she just has so much fire in her. She has a little bit of a temper that feels like a little bit of her, like tapping into her Italian roots too, and a toughness and just this drive that she will continue to show, I think, for the rest of the film for the most part. I like that she never feels like a wilting flower necessarily. Like she's always so active and kind of like in your face and very direct in a way that I appreciate.
Yeah. No, she definitely does have this fire inside. Another Diane Warren song.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and she makes it, and she also always makes you believe in Ellie that Ellie deserves to get where she
Yeah.
gets. So this is always what bothers me the most about the 37 version. This is a nice movie, but it always is like Janet Gaynor is sitting in, I don't know, Arkansas or wherever she is sitting, and she's like, I want to be an actress. And we are constantly supposed to admire her for wanting to be an actress, but we never actually know if she can act.
They never
Should she
show
be an
her
act?
acting.
Yeah. Should she be an
Drives me
actress?
crazy.
Yeah, we don't know. And of course, I mean, they changed this, of course, then in the later movies as well. And
Hmm.
so Lady Gaga is just the perfect vehicle for this. The only thing that bothers me a little bit about the movie, I would wish we would see her rise to stardom a little bit more. It's like she has her shallow moment and then she goes on tour with Jackson, then they have this montage.
Hmm.
And of course,
Yeah.
the montage is always an answer to everything. And then she is famous. And I wish this would have been developed a little bit more because this would probably also given have more to do. I would say that ultimately she hits all the right notes, but they don't really change during the course of the movie. So she hits all the
Mm,
right notes, obviously from a singing point of view, but also from an acting point of view. And despite all the things she is going through, I don't feel too much change happening to her. Maybe that's
right.
intentional to show that she is still the same person and it makes sense. It's just that I don't get the sense that there is too much variety in her emotions. It seems a very narrow road that she is going, but she is going it very successfully.
Yeah. Keeping it consistent, I would say.
Yes.
Yes. And the problem is, yeah, that he's the one who gets the big arc ultimately, that there's
Yeah.
not a lot of room for her to do much beyond react to that. But I do just want to mention a few of those earlier scenes before the fame happens. Talking in that bar about how she doesn't sing her own songs because everyone she comes in contact with in the business says, my nose is too big and that I won't make it. Yes, and she does a little thing with, yeah, touching the nose, and he does the same thing. And I remember watching it the first time and, being such a huge fan of hers, I could definitely see her acting in that moment, just making these very clear choices to go as understated as possible. But watching it again, I do think they both just vibe so well together, and they have this very easy chemistry. And it's like she's giving off this energy that's like, I know I have talent, I know I could sing, but I'm just not marketable. Ultimately, it's not going to go anywhere beyond my performing at this local drag bar. And like, maybe I should just give up on my dreams of going any further with it. Like, that's kind of the sensibility she brings to it for me.
Hmm. Yeah, and as you said, they vibe very well together and have great chemistry. I mean, on the
Yeah.
parking lot,
Yeah. After she punches a cop
that's
at the
yes,
bar, by the way.
good for her.
Yes.
That's another very good scene. I get what you're saying that when you watched it the first time that you can see it feels sometimes a little bit that she is trying very hard not to appear to be trying.
Yes, exactly. Right.
That she wants to be as natural as she can, and at the beginning it sometimes feels a little bit, yeah,
Hmm.
obvious in some parts, but it never bothers me in any way, and it never feels like it takes you out of the movie because her chemistry with Bradley Cooper is so well, and maybe because Bradley Cooper again is so good in those moments with her
Yeah.
that I feel that he just takes her and takes her along for the ride.
Hmm.
And he's
Yeah.
like, okay, just follow me. I know what I'm doing. Just stick to me and we will be fine.
Exactly. Yes. And then, yeah, we do have that shallow performance on the stage, which I still think is such an electrifying sequence. And the way that she plays it, like she's kind of mortified at first and she just dismisses the idea totally of performing with him. And then you just see the walls gradually go down as he is performing the first verse of her song that she sang to him. And she sort of drums up the courage to go out there, and her body language is so uncomfortable at first, but slowly is getting into it and finding her confidence. And I also love the way she conveys that feeling of being so locked in and so, like, she's in her head clearly, but also is very locked in with him over time. And then she's kind of surprised when the audience cheers for them. That feels like a very spontaneous moment for me.
A little, yeah, as I said, it is a great moment, but again, the way she then covers her eyes or covers her mouth, it feels for me again a little bit actually,
Yeah.
if this makes any sense.
Hmm.
It is a strange association, but I always think about Joe Van Fleet in East of Eden in this moment.
Wow.
Um, I know totally random, but this is also a performance. This is obviously a very good performance, but in her big scene, she is so actorly. She is like, okay, now I'm gonna lit a cigarette, so I do stuff while
Hmm.
I'm talking, and now I'm moving this chair all the time, and now I'm just constantly trying to keep very busy with her hands and wanting to
Yeah.
show how in the moment she is, but making it feel a little bit too obvious. And again, I don't hold this against Lady Gaga because overall this is a great performance. Yeah, just feels that she is maybe a little bit too eager. Maybe this would be
Sure.
she's a pleasure to have in class, but she could maybe also just be a little bit calmer from time to time.
Well, as a fan, I will say that is her. Like that is just always going to be her. She's always
Okay.
going to be a little too overeager for some
Okay.
people, ultimately.
Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
take your word on this. You're
yeah,
the expert.
yeah, shit. That's her energy, and I think you can sense that as well in her press tour for this movie, and especially in House of Gucci as well. She's always going to be doing a little too much, but in a way, I find it kind of charming in that
Yeah,
respect because there's not a lot of people who do that. I think
no.
nowadays.
And I mean, also a performance. I mean, she always remains engaging. She's never
Yeah.
off-putting or
Hmm.
distracting in any way. She
Yeah.
fits very well in the movie. She works well with everyone. So not just Bradley Cooper, but also Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
And the I don't know the name of the actor. I think he was in Hamilton. Um, they also
Oh, Anthony
also
Ramos. Yeah.
yes, that's the one.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, sh-
Yeah.
always very good.
Yeah. Playing off of a lot of men, she's very, I feel
Yes.
like she's very used to like dealing with these male egos in her life, like, growing up with
Hmm.
her dad and everything. And it's like she's not going to be passive and just let things happen. Like she's just going to be there. And I like how she kind of weaponizes her own, like the activeness she has in her own career as well, in her own star persona, which I think she puts a lot of good use to there. um Also, just as an aside, I absolutely love the Always Remember Us This Way song. Such an incredible ballad. I always get that stuck in my head for like a week after I rewatch this, which I've done many times. Just the passion in her voice and the power. It's very sweet and romantic, but ultimately very kind of melancholic, ultimately, given where things will end up.
Yeah. No, I mean she nails all her moments. I don't want to say anything against that. I mean, I wouldn't say that the movie is my favorite of all the A Star is Born moments if a performance didn't work.
Right.
And yeah, as what you just said is also very right that she's in this very male-dominated environment. I mean, her agent, obviously Jackson, is the one who makes her famous, but she never feels like she is apologizing for her fame or is feeling not worthy of anything at any time or feeling that she has to tackle a very difficult, and she obviously has to tackle Jackson's drinking problems, but she never apologizes for what she achieves. So I also like the scene very much when they are in the bathroom together and he is drunk and he's
Yeah.
kind of an asshole to her and she doesn't take his shit and she
Hmm.
is very, you know what,
Yeah.
F you.
Right.
And but again, never feels like something is breaking between them. It's just an argument that is part of their relationship.
Yeah. There's a lot of passion going on
Yeah.
between the two of them and individually as artists that you could feel that, you know. And there's that big, yeah, that scene of her, I love when she kind of imitates his voice in a way when they're talking about his drinking and being like, "Oh, we could be drinking buddies and I could be your dad." Cuz she knows, I mean, ultimately she knows that that's going to hit a nerve with him, I think. And she wants to hurt him like he's hurting her
Yeah.
cuz like he's criticizing her pop music now.
Mm.
So, you know,
Yeah. I mean, as much as I love the movie, the scenes between Bradley Cooper and Sam Elliott, that's like
they're
some
having a
point,
growl
some
off.
moment I feel like I need to turn on the subtitles.
And it would just say unintelligible grunting noises.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yes. But also we should mention the Grammy scene, which we always get this
Oh
kind of
yes.
scene in every A Star Is Born, the big award show moment, which of course we love. We love a climactic award show moment. Um,
Yes.
where we have Jack kind of stealing the show there, where she's winning Best New Artist and she's so elated. This is huge for her. And then he makes a big scene and just pisses himself in front of everyone. And the way she tries to protect him there, whether it's by kind of like making it into a little bit of a joke and being like, well, we're having a lot of fun tonight and all that, or covering him with her dress, just the humiliation of that is just very painful to watch, I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, obviously Norman hitting her is not a good thing either. Not a good thing. It's obviously horrible too. Um, it
Yeah.
just feels really that this scene in this version, it's really the most horrible. This is like a car crash, and
Yeah.
when he starts wetting himself, it's really like, oh God, what is happening? The whole scene is so uncomfortable.
Yes.
And yeah, she does this very well, the way she then tries to cover him up, and
Hmm.
you can obviously sense her frustration in those later moments, but also that she doesn't blame him, and that she yeah wants to
Right.
stay with him. And it never feels, when she then says, okay, let's cancel the tour, then it never feels like she's trying to be like the saintly supportive wife. Let's get back to the wife.
Hmm.
But she just wants to be there for him and just loves him and sees this. That's basically what she wants to do.
Yeah, because she even says at one point, what he's going through is a disease. She feels that, like, this is not the real him, what's happened to him ultimately, with his alcoholism really taking over and his addiction. So, yeah, it just makes sense. I mean, going back to how being like, why does she stay with him? I think this is another one that makes sense to me because they just have that shared passion. The way that obviously he sobers up through the rehab clinic and we have all that, that's where it becomes more of his story compared to hers. But
Uh,
I like that she maintains that strength for him because she knows he needs it. And, of course, she tears up a little bit, but it's only after talking to him where it's like, talking to her manager that she becomes much more emotional. And,
uh,
her saying she wants to have Jacko on the tour, like you mentioned, and the manager just denying, denying, denying. And it just upsets her so much to not have control to help this person that she loves the most. And I love her line reading when she says, you know what, if you can't make that happen, then just cancel the tour. I don't know what to fucking tell you. it's, I just think that is very, very effective.
yeah. It's also not too big, so it's very.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. So deal
Yeah,
with it. Give me
exactly.
the deal I want. Yeah.
Hmm.
I wish the scene when they have the scene in the rehab center, and she says to him, I'm a little bit worried because you have known me only when you're drunk. So will you
Yeah.
still love me when you're sober? I wish this had been explored a little bit more,
Hmm.
because it is an interesting observation from her point of view. And but it gets dropped. I think it gets dropped immediately. I don't think that she mentions it again at some point.
Yeah, I know. I think there's just not a lot of time left, and
Yeah.
how we have to get through the end of every A Star Is Born. That always
Yeah.
ends the way it does, about how it's the male lead's downfall, and naturally it's the female lead grieving the loss of him. And I do think she's quite effective there too. I love the conversation she has with Sam Elliott as Jackson's brother, where she just doesn't even really know what to say anymore. And he tells her that Jackson loved the way she expressed herself through her music, and just her reaction to that is very vulnerable, very tender. I agree with what you were saying earlier in terms of her best scenes are with Bradley, of course, but those scenes, those handful of scenes she has with Sam Elliott, I think really do pack a punch.
Yes. And of course her final big song
Yeah.
also delivers.
Yes. And that final big close up looking directly into the camera. Iconic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it is very effective, and I mean that's again from all the A Star Is Born movies. I would say that's the only time where I know what Jackson is about to do, and I'm like, oh no, don't do it. Why? No, don't
Hmm.
do it.
Yeah.
And where I really understand, or not understand, where I really, I think where the grief of the female lead maybe affects me the most,
Yeah.
just because the relationship between them has worked so well throughout the entire movie, and the movie has so much depended on it. While I think that the other Star is Born movies always have more things going for them outside of the central relationships.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean necessarily that they are better, but I just think that the relationship between the two leads feels for me the most developed in this one.
I agree with that, actually. Yeah. I hadn't actually thought of that, but this is the one that really feels the most like it hurts when that relationship is ultimately has to end in the
Yeah.
end. But you also know that she'll always sort of carry him with her in that way.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I think it's a
She
really
will be
lovely.
fine.
Yes, I think so. It's a lovely lead debut. Like it feels sort of like a debut performance, but even though it's not really, but in terms of just like really stepping up, it's very effective. And I hope she and Bradley can work together again because I just love their chemistry. So
Yeah, would be nice. Yeah, I don't know why they're not doing it.
why didn't she play Felicia Montelegre in Maestro? Let's have that
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, definitely. I don't know. Why was Bradley Cooper not in House of Gucci?
That's also fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know. Let's hope that they work together at some point.
Well, that's Gaga. Let's move on
That's
to our
Gaga. Yeah.
final losing nominee. All right. Melissa McCarthy in Can You Ever Forgive Me? All right, so she's getting her second Oscar nomination here, her first in lead. So, another introduction for this episode. Melissa was born in Illinois, and she eventually found her way to Los Angeles, where she was part of the Groundlings sketch comedy troupe. And she also performed as a drag queen in New York, and she did stand up. So, very much based in comedy and entertaining, which is what she came to be known for. But her first film role was a minor role in the movie Go in 1999, but then she rose to prominence with her role as Suki on Gilmore Girls, which she starred on for 7 seasons from 2000 to 2007. She also had a short lived role on Samantha Who. So she was mostly seen as a supporting player through the 2000s, and she popped up in movies but was mostly known for TV. And then 2011 was a huge turning point in her career on many levels because she had gotten her start as one of the leads on Mike and Molly, the CBS sitcom, the previous year, and earned her first Emmy nomination. And then that summer of 2011, she was in Bridesmaids and was the standout of that very funny ensemble of women. And her star exploded from there, and she won that Emmy for Mike and Molly in September. And then later that year, she got awards attention for Bridesmaids, including a Best Supporting Actress nomination at the Oscars, a rare broad comedy performance to do that. So, in the wake of that, she became a full blown movie star, carrying her own movies, most of them comedies like Identity Thief and The Heat, Tammy, Spy, The Boss, Ghostbusters. A lot of them did very well at the box office. She won quite a few People's Choice Awards. She got her first Golden Globe nomination for Spy. So by the time we get to Can You Ever Forgive Me, she's a well established comedy star with occasional dips into drama and dramedy, like St. Vincent, for example. But Can You Ever Forgive Me is a big change of pace where she is working with Mariel Heller, working in a much more understated mode than people were used to. So, as some people know, Melissa McCarthy was not the first person attached to play this role of Lee Israel. Julianne Moore was originally supposed to play her and reportedly was going to wear a fat suit. And there were major creative differences that led to Julianne being sacked. And Nicole Holofcener, who was originally attached to direct, also left. So then in comes Mariel Heller and Melissa McCarthy. This is based on the real life story of Lee Israel, an author who had some notoriety for her biographies. And by the time we get to 1991, which is when this film takes place, she has become jaded and desperate for work, going through major financial troubles. And so one day she finds two personal letters written by Fanny Brice and decides to sell them, and it leads to her forging a series of letters written in the style of notable figures like Fanny Brice and Noel Coward, and selling them around town to libraries and collectors. In the process, she also becomes closer to an old acquaintance, Jack Hawk, played by Richard E. Grant, and she enlists him in her scheme, and she tries to stay undetected, but definitely struggles to do so. So let's talk Melissa McCarthy. Tell me your relationship with Miss McCarthy and her semi-transformative performance here.
Love Melissa McCarthy. Probably like most people, I was introduced to her with Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Um, I wasn't a passionate viewer, but I would say that I probably watched. I think I watched it until the end back then. I
Mhm.
think I watched it with my mom. I never saw Mike and Molly, to be honest. I think I saw a few clips, but it just never clicked. So it never resonated with me. But I loved it. Of course, the Emmy presentation when she wins the Emmy, that is very iconic.
Yes.
Um, and in general, probably like most people, I know her from those, as you said, Bridesmaids, those big comedies, which she does so well. And yeah, Can You Ever Forgive Me? is the kind of how people are always like, oh, she's only a comedian, but look how she can always also do more serious stuff. And this is always bothers me so much because I always think that if you're a great comedian, then you can also do drama. And I think
Hmm.
most great comedians can. And for me, it's always actually the other way around. It should be much more observed and much more, because not every performer who can do drama is also a good comedian. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if for me it's always like Liv Ullmann. She is one of the greatest dramatic actresses I've ever seen. And in the 70s, she tried to do some sex comedies to get going more in Hollywood, and this is some of the worst stuff you can imagine.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't think it's really surprising that she is very good in Can You Ever Forgive Me, especially because it allows her to also be funny. I mean, it's not like a straight up dramatic role.
Hmm.
She is also pretty funny. I think I just wrote down one line when she says to Richard E. Grant when they're in the restaurant, "How can you eat this when you have a stick in your mouth?" Um,
Yes.
and she has this kind of deadpan delivery, so it's a very
Hmm.
different comedy to the one she usually does. And it probably will be very difficult to find somebody with two Oscar nominations who is more different in those two performances. And yeah, in general, I mean, she has two Oscar nominations and she is famous, but she is probably very underappreciated as an actress. She can do a lot. The movie is also great. If this
Hmm.
was about a man, this probably would have done much better with awards.
Yeah.
It is a very funny movie. It is a very entertaining movie. This is essentially the movie version of Be Gay, Do Crime.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and of course it's not like murder or thief. No, it's a more gay crime, sophisticated crimes like forging
Yeah.
letters from Catherine Hepburn or Julie Holliday or Noel Coward. So that's the kind of crime you want to see.
Hmm.
And I mean, the movie itself, this would not necessarily be a great movie. Not a lot is happening if we're completely so in a way. I mean, obviously she is forging the letters, and this is a life story. But the movie is really only so interesting because Melissa McCarthy makes the character so interesting, and it's a pleasure to follow her. We like to see her succeed with what she is doing. I cry with her when her cat dies.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am, yeah.
Mm.
I am happy when she is on a date. I am sad when she's found out. It is probably out of the five nominees, it is the most straightforward role. So there's not a lot of I feels that there's not a lot of internal things going on, like these big dramatic close-ups where we have to wonder what she's going through. It is a very straightforward story about this woman who does this, and then this is happening to her. But she fills it with life every moment along the way. Again, a very lived-in performance, very different, of course, than from Roma, but just as natural in her own way in what she is doing.
I agree. Yeah, I love Melissa McCarthy as well. I first came by her not through Gilmore Girls, though I watched that later and loved it. Actually, it was through Samantha Who, believe it or not. And I just loved her style and continued to mostly love her comedic style, which feels very rooted in just like classic old school, almost vaudeville at times, but also slapstick. I also think of like Marie Dressler, like that kind of thing,
Yes.
where she will truly do anything for a laugh. And she's just so committed to that kind of old school entertainment, which we don't often get anymore.
Yeah.
So, you
Where's
know,
where's the Mary Dressler biopic?
I agree completely. And she could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was amazing to see her really sort of take the bull by the horns after Bridesmaids and became such a big star, especially that happening to her like in her 40s. And as a plus size actress, she really carved out her own unique path. And not unlike Marie Dressler herself, who was like this very unique star at the time. So, yeah. But would love to see her version of Can You Ever Forgive Me, the Marie Dressler version. Um, but seeing her in this was like, wow, because like I knew she was talented and a very smart and gifted actress, but to see her pull this off and still show those comedic skills, but also having this undercurrent of bitterness and, not have some of that feel like a joke necessarily, like you're not really laughing at her, you're laughing with her in these moments. Like I think it's a remarkable performance. And I love how she really brings that very classic Melissa McCarthy, frank, slightly socially awkward energy that is as funny as she always is, but there's this real undercurrent of depression and misanthropy ultimately that really informs how she interacts with other people, where she's just tired of hustling from day to day. And I think it really wears on her face, kind of having to deal with that. And I think the key is her feeling like everyone around her is doing so much better and seemingly happier than her. And she just can't stand the fakeness of how people are around her. And she kind of feels like she sees the truth of how things really are. And it's made her a pessimist and very cynical. It actually weirdly reminds me of like that scene in Broadcast News where someone asks the Holly Hunter character how it must be nice being the smartest person in the world. And she's like, no, it's awful. And it's a very different character, obviously, but that's something I can relate to Lee here, too. Of feeling like she really just sees things for how they really are, and she is kind of a truth teller, and it just kind of depresses her, ultimately, that more people aren't like that.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, she also with her agent, she's also always very open. That's just the way she is. And by the way, I want more Jane Curtin in movies.
Yes.
Always great to see her. Um, yeah, just the way she establishes her as this, as you said, very tired and cynical person. I mean, I want to read her Fanny Barai's biography.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure it would be great, yeah.
Yeah, when Jane Curtin is like,
And
no one wants to read another biography about Fanny Bryce, I'm like, well, I would.
yes. I mean, a lot of this probably also depends on her, just her on-screen personality, that she can be a little bit difficult, she can be a little bit obnoxious, but you always still like her.
Hmm.
And you never mind when she is doing anything illegal, obviously. But I mean, the movies are very. I don't want to say the movie is fun, but it's very easy to follow both her and Jack and
Yeah,
just appreciate them for what they are doing, even if it's obviously faking these letters. But it's just very easy to enjoy what they are, to enjoy following them along, just because they are both Melissa McCarthy and Richard E. Grant are these very appealing personalities. So with a different actress, even a Julianne Moore, I think this would be a much different movie and probably much more serious
yeah,
and maybe not right for the kind of story that they are telling.
exactly. Yeah, I can't even imagine what that would look like, that version. So I'm glad things happened the way they did.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I was just, rewatching this and feeling like she's such a distinct personality and is almost like a Fran Lebowitz type of just being like this very authentic New Yorker. And she will very rarely adapt her tone or her personality depending on who she's talking to. She just kind of settled into this version of herself and she's not going to apologize for it. She's obviously very interested in people because she is in her biography work, but she's also not all that comfortable with other people knowing her, I think, and building relationships with her because I think she might just have this fear of disappointing people and she struggles so much with compromise that she's never going to be the one to reach out to another person. Like they kind of have to reach out to her. And I think for an actress who has really built her career, at least by this point, of playing loud characters who are often very brash and off putting, I think this is such a great casting and such a great usage of Melissa to show this side of her she doesn't often explore that is a little more internal, but still having weirdly the energy of a Melissa McCarthy type at the same time. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a miracle how that works.
Yeah, it's like she internalizes this very big energy that she usually always have and uses it
Right.
for very small effects, but nonetheless just as effectful.
Hmm.
And yeah, just the way when she is at the party of her agent, and then at the end she's like, "Oh, that's my code. I forgot. I lost my paper." And just the small smile that she has, and the way she's talking to her landlord, and yeah, as you said, she doesn't try to be very pleasing or very overtly friendly. Just she's mostly just trying to get along.
Yeah,
And this makes her overall very relatable, and you always understand what she is doing and why she is doing it.
I think
And
so.
yeah, and I mean her chemistry with Richard E. Grant is also fantastic. They both play each other off very well. And again, it feels like just a very Melissa McCarthy role, even if it's so unusual. Just because she also had, I mean, it's a very funny role. She has does make these prank calls and
Right.
has various one-liners that work very well again because she's deadpan in the way she delivers them.
Yeah. And they seem very different because he's so outgoing and so personable and so interested in people. But I think also he kind of shares a similar sense of humor with her, and that deadpan humor and their poking fun at each other is always such a joy to watch. And they both just allow each other to be totally honest, which I think is refreshing for her, but it also, allows her to open up about things once in a while. Like there's this scene where she is revealing that she started to do the forgeries, and there's this slight smugness there that's like she finally has something that's sort of worth bragging about after so many months of years probably of disappointment. And I think that is quite revealing as well, because she's like taking a little bit of ownership. Like, even though this is technically illegal, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm pulling this off. And I finally have found something that I can be a little bit proud of.
Yeah, and you totally believe that her character would be able to write letters that are just as witty as whatever Dorothy Parker would write. And
Right.
when she says at the end that she regrets what she did, but it was actually also a lot of fun for her and that she liked doing it, you can already see that in those earlier scenes that as nervous as she obviously is whenever she sells a letter and she senses that maybe things become a little bit difficult for her, that she still enjoys doing it because she knows I'm pretty good at this, and there's a personal satisfaction that she gets from fooling all these people with what she is doing. I mean,
Right.
it's obviously a different movie than The Wife, but there is this kind of satisfaction from writing something, maybe not taking credit for it, but
Yeah.
obviously very different in a way. But
Mm-hmm.
you can understand in both cases the different reactions that both of these women have to what they are doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you would want to see their variety actors on actors
Yes.
discussion, Glenn and Melissa. Um,
Yeah. You would want to see their characters meet maybe someday and discuss
yeah,
what
I
they've
know.
been through.
But yeah, there is that tension of having that pride, but also having to conceal. And the way that she plays the panic of when she's been being found out by the whole literary world about her forgeries, and like trying her best to keep calm, but her stomach is clearly in knots and she's trying to soldier on like everything's fine. She can't blow her cover, but that high she felt of getting away with it is kind of already gone. And now she's in panic mode and she's trying these different things, like getting Jack to sell forgeries, or stealing these authenticated letters and replacing them with forgeries, and like trying to sell the real letters. But there is that creeping guilt, I think, that she doesn't really have a choice but to double down on her plan. But it just makes her more miserable ultimately, and she just kind of spirals from there. But yeah, we also have these little moments of this one scene where her and Jack argue, and like she doesn't like how he doesn't understand why these letters are of value to people. And she tells him it's a portal to a better time and place where people honored the written word. And she says it with so much feeling and honesty that it kind of unlocks for me her whole philosophy and her worldview in a way of kind of like she's romanticizing the past a little bit and not truly living in the present, and feeling very out of place in the world today. And that just kind of pushes her away from anyone who wants to get close to her in a way.
Mhm. Yeah, and she's obviously not doing this just to make money with it, but she's doing it because this is something that she understands. I mean, she wants to write a
Right.
Fanny Bryce biography, so she's obviously connected or invested into this world of Dorothy Parker and Noel Coward and all these other peoples. And Melissa McCarthy shows very well the kind of satisfaction she gets from doing this. But as you said, the more the movie goes on, also how difficult it becomes for her. I mean, the scene in the library when she is replacing the real letter with the forgery is surprisingly intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more tense than some thrillers that come out today.
Yes. And you want her to succeed.
Yeah. Which is a fun sort of tension there. And then the with the FBI kind of building their case against her and she has to appear in court. That scene where she makes her statement, I think is unbelievable for her. I think it's one of the best scenes of her career where she admits that she doesn't have those regrets and how in many ways this has been the best time of my life. And it's the only time recently that I can remember being proud of my work. And I think she really just reflects how sad that is in a way, and how writing as herself instead of as other people would have meant opening herself up to criticism, maybe. And she's too much of a coward to do that.
Yeah.
And it really feels like she's sort of coming up with a lot of this on the spot. It doesn't feel like a rehearsed monologue to me.
Yeah, that's also what I took away from it. As much as this obviously is her big moment, and as emotional as this moment is, it never feels like she is trying to turn it into a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
It feels just like an extension of the character she has built so far. So she isn't trying to add any more depths or hidden meaning or inner life to this moment than necessary. She just shows, okay, this is the woman I have played so far, and this is how she would react to the situation, and this is what she takes away from it, and this is also the way she would present it. She is obviously not the kind of, I mean, she knows she's talking to a judge, so she's not as open as she would be when talking to her agent or other
Mm-hmm.
people, but she still has that very specific, unique spark about her, even in this moment.
Yeah. And I just think, I know we didn't speak too much about this, but her physicality and the way she carries herself in the film, I think is just so authentic feeling. All her mannerisms, they just feel very, very comfortable ultimately, but also showing that feeling of like, wanting to open herself up to the world, but there's so much fear of failure and rejection underneath that. And I just think she carries that heaviness very well, ultimately. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I just think it's a fully formed performance. And I'm so glad that she got this opportunity to show people that there was more to her than, the broad, entertaining comedies.
Yeah, me too. And I hope that she gets back to something like this soon.
Yes. Because I thought after this that maybe she might do more things like this because she got such great praise for this. Obviously, getting an Oscar nomination, like it's, she was hugely praised for this, but then it feels like we didn't really further along this type of performance necessarily or film. I know she loves comedy, which, she can obviously do her thing. It's her career. But yeah, I wish she would get back to this type of style because she's so,
Mm,
so good at it.
yeah. Feels that probably, I don't know what she is offered. Maybe she needs to find her own kind
Yeah.
of passion project that she
Yeah. Produce herself.
produces
Yeah.
herself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully someday we can talk about another performance from her. Okay, shall we move on to our winner?
Yeah, let's.
All right. Olivia Colman in The Favorite. So, another introduction. Olivia Colman wins her Oscar on her first nomination. To introduce her here, she was born in Norfolk in England. She studied drama at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. She was born Sarah Coleman, but she changed her name professionally because there was another actress named Sarah Coleman at that time. She did a lot of TV work in the early 2000s, most notably in Peep Show, which was her breakthrough. She had numerous TV roles, too many to name, really. And in film, one of her first roles was in Hot Fuzz. She had her film breakthrough in terms of critical acclaim in Tyrannosaur in 2011. She was also in The Iron Lady as Margaret Thatcher's daughter that same year, wearing quite the nose. Uh, Meanwhile, she gained more acclaim for her TV work in shows like Broadchurch, for which she won a BAFTA TV award, and The Night Manager, which got her first Emmy nomination and a Golden Globe win. So prior to The Favorite, she had worked with Yorgos Lanthimos on The Lobster, which also starred Rachel Weisz, so a bit of a reunion for them here. She appeared in the ensemble of Murder on the Orient Express, so she was a decently well-respected actress, but maybe not really a worldwide name until we got to The Favorite. So this is kind of this absurdist take on the story of Queen Anne of Britain. It takes place in the early 1700s, and Olivia was Yorgos's first and only choice to play Anne. So the film follows the erratic Queen Anne, who, despite her queen status, has a very troubled life. She has various illnesses, including gout. She has 17 rabbits, which are to make up for her lost children. She shows very little interest in governing, and she's courted by her advisor, Sarah, played by Rachel Weisz, who has a lot of influence over Anne's decision-making. And as we come to find out, she's also sleeping with her. And meanwhile, Sarah's cousin Abigail, played by Emma Stone, arrives at the castle pretty much broke and works as a scullery maid, but she is highly ambitious and tries to court Anne herself. First by tending to her ailments and eventually befriending her and having an affair with her of her own. And it becomes a battle for Anne's attention and influence. So let us get to our big winner here, Olivia Colman. Fritz, what is your relationship with Olivia Colman as an actress, and what do you think of her winning performance here?
So I've actually had a quite difficult relationship to Olivia Colman.
Oh,
The funny thing is, I know I saw her in stuff before The Favorite, prior to The Favorite, but for some reason I never really remembered her. So I just, as you said it, I was like, oh right, she was in the Iron Lady. And
yeah.
yeah, right, she was a Murder on the Orient Express. I saw this, and yes, I saw Hot Fuzz, but I didn't see Broadchurch prior to her Oscar win, so a lot of her TV, I didn't see any of her TV work. So she wasn't really anyone who caught my attention. So my real introduction to her was The Favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw The Wife and The Favorite prior to the Oscars because I knew that a lot of people were like, oh my God, Olivia Colman, she's so amazing in The Favorite and she could win. And so I wanted to see this myself. And I saw this and I thought she was good. I even thought she was great, but I didn't get all the, oh my God, greatest performance of all time talk that so many people had at the time. So people went back, people on film Twitter, they went crazy about her.
Yeah.
And I think we had this discussion when we talked about Michelle Pfeiffer on our last podcast. It sometimes is that when you think a performance is good, but you're not as crazy about it as everyone else, you kind of become a little bit contrary and think,
Yeah.
okay, let's not exaggerate here. And this is also why it's so difficult for me always to talk about Oscar nominated movies or stuff like this when in the time that it happens. For me, it's always easier to talk about them when a couple of years have passed. So at the time when she won and I was disappointed about Glenn losing, I was like, are you kidding me? Why is because everybody was like, oh my God, this win is so amazing. It is so great that she won. This is the greatest win of all time. And I was like, are you all kidding me with this? This is an okay performance, but why are you all so crazy about this? And then I read an article, I think it was on the Film Experience, where somebody ranked even just the Oscar clips and ranked her Oscar clip as number one. And this was just the scene where she is like, oh, I did not know that.
I did not
Which
know
is
that.
this is a good which is a good scene, but again, I was like,
Yeah.
are you all kidding me with this? And so I became
Mm-hmm.
more and more anti Olivia Colman over time. I had totally
Wow.
forgotten. I realized this when I listened again to Academy Queen's podcast. I had sent a question in where I said, why is everyone so crazy about Olivia Colman? Any decent actress could have given the same performance. And
Wow.
yeah, I
Ooh.
totally forgotten that I had asked this. Um, this was my first controversial tweet on film Twitter back then. There was this trend where you said the movie villain and the real villain, and I posted basically Jonathan Pryce and the wife, and then Olivia Colman holding her Oscar. And this was the first tweet for which I got a lot
Wow.
of shit.
Quote tweets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, okay, just ignore it. And then, I mean, the thing is, I never disliked Olivia Colman herself. So
Right.
like everyone else, I probably watched her Oscar speech a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, just some time needed to pass. And then I watched The Favorite again, and then I realized, okay. And then I watched it again specifically for this podcast, and then okay, this is actually a pretty great performance. Okay.
Wow.
Sometimes it just takes a while.
What a journey.
Yeah, and I'm no longer don't have the opinion anymore that any decent actress could have given the same performance because there is something very unique about Olivia Colman, and she is a fantastic actress. I mean, she is great in Broadchurch. She is great in her other nominated stuff. She can do comedy and drama both very well. And she does bring a very unique energy to this part. And I mean, there could probably be other actresses who could do this as well, but she does leave her mark on this character. And I can understand why this did become such a popular performance and win at the time. I mean, the win obviously connected also to her off-screen personality, but
Hmm.
her performance itself is also very strong. So I don't deny this anymore. If I would pick her myself, who knows? We'll see.
We'll see.
But it is a great performance, and I can understand, even though this is really a three women show, and Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone are both fantastic in their own ways as well. I can understand why Olivia Colman is the one who, at the end, walked away with most of the critical praise, and of course, was at the end singled out by the Oscars and was the one who went lead compared to the others who, yeah, I don't know. Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone in supporting that really upsets and chagrins me, if this is the correct use of the word.
Yes, it
The
is.
greed and corruption of Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz is really upsetting.
I
Yeah,
think
it
that
is
was more of a studio
yeah,
mandate for them.
yeah,
Like I think even they were not particularly thrilled to be
yeah,
in supporting. But yeah.
probably was. I mean, the first time I saw the movie, this yeah, it's also kind of like a journey with the movie itself. The first time I saw it, it felt like for me, Rachel Weisz was the most lead character, even though by now I know that she actually has the least screen time of them. It
Hmm.
just felt that she is like the most connected to everything that is going on. But of course, I mean, this is all just the thinking that we have, yeah, the greed and corruption of movie studios that we just somehow always think, okay, one of them has to be supporting, but they're all three of them are lead. Done. That's it.
Yeah. They're all three leads, just like the
Yes.
three women of the hours are all leads. There
Yes.
can be three women leads. That is
Yes.
possible.
It
Believe it
is
or not.
possible.
The
Yes.
world is round, people.
Yes.
Yes, so I obviously have a complicated relationship with this as a Glenn Close stan, and I'll get into that when we discuss the Oscar race and the results. Nothing against Olivia, like you were saying, obviously, because she is great. She has such a hilarious screen presence, so expressive. I love her very cheeky style of performing when she's doing comedy, but she does also back that up with a real just a real gravitas, I think. There's just this sort of radiant energy that I love from her, especially at award shows. And this role of Queen Anne is truly a gift for any actress who is up for the challenge. And I think she absolutely is. Like, this is such a chaotic character. And I say character, even though she was a real person, because there's quite a bit of exaggeration here going on, of course, because that's the style. But it's like she's very happy and peppy and jovial 1 second, and then suddenly she's depressed and sullen and or lashing out or crying, and then like also delighting 2 seconds later at making these two people jealous of each other and all that. There's just so much of it that could easily come across as almost too chaotic and irritating to the point of like actually hurting the movie because you just don't understand what she's doing. But I think she really nails what's asked of her and goes even further with it and really taps into the loneliness that Anne had and the isolation she felt, even when she's surrounded by people who are attending to her. And I love how she just communicates this very transparent desire for attention and love, like her seeking the approval of Sarah through so much of like that first half of the film, her eagerness when she does show Sarah this model of the residence that she wants her to have. There's almost like a childlike quality and an immaturity in the way that she even looks at Sarah, and it speaks to how complicated their relationship is because like Sarah is her lover and her favorite, but she's also a very trusted advisor when it comes to her actual ruling and decision making. And she also kind of operates as this parental figure at times to Anne and this stabilizing force. So Sarah is like a lot of things to her. And I think Olivia just nails the insecurity of Anne and how much she relies on Sarah and other people to serve her and like always have to make sure she's in a good mood. So I just love the tension there of how like she's always almost a half second away from completely melting down. And even if you look at that as funny or for as silly as the movie can be, for me it never feels like a cartoonish kind of performance, even if it's very loud.
Yeah, I'm personally, I think that Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone have slightly more interesting characters simply because they are more
Yeah.
active. And Rachel
Hmm.
Weisz has obviously this very domineering, I want to say delicious quality to her performance, while Emma
Oh yeah.
Stone is very honestly work with what she is doing. But I do
Doing
feel,
some sociopathic
yeah,
shit.
yes,
Honestly, work.
honestly
She
work,
needed her
yes,
gaze around her to
yes,
boost her up.
yeah. But I do feel that Olivia Colman has the most challenging role. Because as you said, it is so easy that the performance could throw the movie off balance because it is so going in all directions and so quickly from one moment to the next. But she does nail that. And it is a very passive character in a way because she's constantly manipulated by one character or the other. And she obviously, of course, never really, I mean, there might be moments and later in the movie where she might understand some things, but for a long distance of the movie, she is really manipulated without really noticing it. Or, of course, she enjoys it, but she lets herself be manipulated also. As you said, there's a childlike quality, and she does feel very childish at moments. And it's very easy to understand why because Sarah gives her a lot of tough love, while of course Abigail is very, oh, you can do whatever you want. I let you have chocolate. And she's very like this parent who lets her child do anything she wants. And of course, she will be drawn to her more because of that, because she doesn't feel disciplined or limited by her. But despite all this passiveness, you never doubt that she is actually the one in control,
Hmm.
that she is the one with the power, that she is the one pulling the strings, and why the others are constantly trying to get into her good graces. And I mean, not just because you're an English actress doesn't mean you're automatically suited to play a royal character. But she
Well,
certainly
you'd be
does.
surprised based
Yeah.
on everything I've seen. Yeah. Seems like
But
a requirement for every British actor.
feels like so, but I don't think all of them are necessarily totally successful at
Right.
it. But you
Yeah.
never doubt that she has this very strong screen presence, even so Anne is a very weak character who's maybe not even taken seriously by most people, but she has the presence. There's something royal about her, and
Oh yeah.
she does have the command. So when she starts changing her mood and starts stop doing whatever you're doing, stop playing music, stop dancing. There's never a doubt that anybody would immediately do what she wants. So
That's
she
very
does
true.
have a constant control over everything that is happening.
Right.
And yeah, it is not an easy role. So
Hmm.
I think, as I said, Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone might be a little bit more entertaining, just to watch their struggle and their constant fights. But Olivia Colman is really the one who balances the movie and who makes it believable what is happening between Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone.
I agree. Yeah. And I love the scene where she's put on this garish makeup to meet the ambassador or whoever, and Sarah says she looks like a badger,
Yeah.
and it visibly hurts her, and Sarah's like, oh, you're gonna cry now. And Anne is kind of embarrassed, but also she can't help but be affected by her words. Like, she is very sensitive. And that's also the scene where she says her famous line to that foot soldier. Did you just look at me? Look at me. Look at me. How dare you? Close your eyes. Just the way her very clipped line delivery there, and how, like, staccato it is perfection, especially just the sharpness there. And also the volume. Like, the
Yeah.
volume, the loudness she gets to is kind of unbelievable at times.
Yeah. And I mean, it is also a very physical performance. So not
Very.
just the scenes when she has the pain, but I mean, she has various scenes when she throws up. She has this very distinct walk.
Mm-hmm.
She has this very funny scene when she faints.
Yes.
Just the way she eats at some moments, and she basically eats, throws up, and continues to eat. So there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
And in the later part of the movie, you always get that when she needs to be in command. So when Sarah has left the court, then she feels much more in command than she did before.
Yeah.
And she knows who she is and she knows her role, but she definitely has been under a certain spell from
Mm-hmm.
Sarah. And of course, now her behavior not completely shifts, but there is just a change with the appearance of Abigail. And Olivia Colman very beautifully and hilariously displays this process. And what she can do so well is just change the tone of a scene from 1 second to the next. I mean, the famous scene with the rabbits
Mm.
comes essentially completely out of nowhere. So up to this moment, I always think that up to this moment, she has been very much like a comic relief because she had this, oh, I did not know that, and close your eyes scene. And then and then she can suddenly expand the character with, I mean, the rabbit scene is also not very long. That is just, it is a very short scene, but it is so powerful because it comes so sudden, and she is able to display so much grief in just a few seconds that you are completely caught by surprise and suddenly begin also to see her character in a different light. She suddenly becomes a much more serious person.
Yeah, and I think much more sympathetic ultimately
Yeah.
of, she's talking about how she lost 17 children, some of them stillborn, and yeah, each one of them that dies a little bit goes with them. Yeah, I really appreciate that scene, that it's there to give us that layer of why she is the way she is, perhaps how she got to this place, cuz losing 17 children, yeah, you're going to go a little crazy, I think.
Mm.
I think sometimes the nature of what's asked of her does get slightly repetitive over time. Like when, obviously she's like yelling at the musicians playing outside to stop and she doesn't want to hear it. A great line reading, but, that and sort of the aftermath of her crying and just a lot of her kind of wailing in pain. I think some of that is a slightly similar note that is sort of asked of her, even if it's very entertaining and it's obviously not Olivia's fault necessarily, but there are moments like that that do get slightly repetitive in terms of what's asked of her, I suppose. I don't know if you agree on that.
Yeah, it might be. It is a very grand performance, and she obviously does have to play a lot of different notes, but yeah, you're right that she probably at some point has to repeat some of these notes. But I think what benefits her, or what is when probably everybody who watches the movie has a different reaction. But when I watch the movie, it's like at first or I'm at first was more with Rachel Weisz's character, then somehow begin to switch over to Emma Stone's character, and you're like, you go,
Yeah.
girl. Then at
Mm-hmm.
some point Emma Stone becomes this really horrible person, and then you're kind of okay, who am I rooting for? And at the end, somehow Queen Anne becomes the character you're actually the most with, and who stays with you. So we probably
That's
also
true.
talk about this in the Oscar race. This for me probably helps her, but it is also just a testament to her performance that her character, even so it does from time to time hit the same notes, it does feel that you're going through a journey with her and that you see her differently at the end than you do at the beginning.
Yeah. That's certainly true. I mean, I like the whole exploration of after Sarah is sent away through Abigail's sort of machinations, and we see Anne really start to miss her, but also in the same breath, like dismiss her and go all in on this relationship with Abigail. It's very much like this thing of like when you're clearly not over your ex and you want to know that you want to know how they're doing, but also you're kind of like, oh, screw them.
Yeah,
Like like that's very much what she's communicating there.
yeah.
But then when Sarah does return, I love how Anne kind of wields her power in a way of being like, oh, well, things have gone just fine without you here. Like, I'm making these decisions in the whole war effort. And she's sort of taunting Sarah as being jealous. And like, she's just so proud of herself in a way. But then when Sarah threatens to blackmail her with these love letters that they've sent to each other, like if she doesn't get rid of Abigail and bring her back to the same position of power, that she'll just release these letters, all the sort of color leaves her face because she knows that Sarah does have that power, and she's very, she knows her very well. She's very persistent and could very well ruin her.
Yeah, and the movie obviously lives from the chemistry between all three actresses, and they
Yeah.
obviously work together fantastically. It doesn't matter in which constellation they are on the screen. It's always just so wonderful to watch. Of course, it's best when it's all three of them. And I don't know, like when they are in the carriage or walking then back, and then Rachel Weisz is like very, oh, you remember our wonderful past, things we did together, and gives this side eye to Emma Stone, and Emma Stone is then again, okay, what am I doing now to get her back? It is a very entertaining movie, and you constantly understand why Sarah and Abigail are trying to get Anne's attention, and the dynamics of this power struggle. But yeah, as I said before, it wouldn't be as effective if Olivia Colman's performance wouldn't make sense of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only that, but just towards the end, how she is physically deteriorating,
Yeah.
essentially, without being too overt about, showing that. She has some facial paralysis, I think, going on, and she tries to make certain decisions in the court, but she's so exhausted and numb from like whatever treatment she's been getting, and it genuinely seems like she is going through this illness and carrying the burden of that is just fully weighing down on her. But I love how even through that, she still knows the power that she has, which is what sets up the ending, and how she handles Abigail. And she does get manipulated by her to, get rid of Sarah for good, but she does see how Abigail doesn't exactly have her best interest at heart and is also maybe a terrible person and is abusing her rabbits for fun and acts in a very selfish and almost conceited manner, which leads to that ending where she is forcing Abigail to rub her leg and just kind of showing her who's boss and showing her the cost of all those ambitions. And I love that look of bitterness and almost like disgust on her face to start with, but also a little bit of pride in a way, like a little bit of a smile in a way, which is such a haunting image that we kind of leave on.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, you do get the feeling that maybe Sarah at some point went through similar things, but she just knew how to handle Anne in a way that Abigail just does not. And even though Abigail came out as the winner of this power struggle, she's just no match for Anne. And yeah, again, all of this is just very beautifully displayed in Olivia Colman's performance, the way she interacts with Rachel Weisz, the way she interacts with Emma Stone. Does feel that she's hitting a lot of similar beats, but it always still feels very unique to her screen partner.
Yeah.
And just the more fun she sometimes has with Rachel Weisz, this kind of when she says, "Oh, when Rachel Weisz says you're enjoying this," and she is like a small child, and yes, she is enjoying this, and of course, this very iconic. I like it when she puts her tongue inside me.
Oh my god. I still have a reaction every time I see this movie when she says that.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Yeah, it's such a bold performance, and I think it could have been very silly and over the top in a bad way, but she just nails the tone so well. I think she nails like that collaboration with Yorgos, honestly, even better for me than what Emma does in her collaborations with Yorgos. They just somehow understand each other, him and Olivia.
Yeah. And I mean, she is an actress who can go very big. That's also just very important. It just could have been very over the top. Again, in the 50s, maybe Susan Hayward would have played this role.
Oh my god. Poor Susan. Catching strays.
And yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just a quality of Olivia Colman's acting that she can be so big, but that she can also be so effective in the smaller moments, and that she knows how to do comedy and drama because the movie is essentially throwing everything at her and
Yeah.
also demands her to be everything at once, and she is up to the task.
hmm I would also like to cast Betty Davis in this role,
Oh, yes.
for the record. I like
Yeah.
it when she puts her tongue inside me.
Yeah. A 30s version of this would generally be great.
Yep. Yep. Anyway, anything else on Olivia before we get to this Oscar analysis here?
Just in general, sorry, Olivia, it took me a while, but you got me.
You got there.
Yeah.
Love that journey for you.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get to these Oscars here. For the precursors, for the Critics Awards, Olivia Colman did very well. She won the Los Angeles Film Critics, the National Society of Film Critics, many other critics awards. Glenn Close won the Independent Spirit Award and at San Diego, but she didn't have too many wins with critics. Lady Gaga won the National Board of Review, a very National Board of Review pick. Melissa McCarthy won at Boston and San Francisco and a few others. The only one who didn't have a strong presence with critics was Yalitza Aparicio in terms of winning. So then with the major precursors, Olivia, Glenn, Gaga, and Melissa all nominated at Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, SAG, and BAFTA. So no real suspense in terms of them eventually getting nominated. Yalitza was only nominated at Critics' Choice, but with wins, it was certainly not a sweep, as we have been discussing quite a few times this season with sweepers. This was a very volatile race, with Olivia and Glenn winning the Golden Globe for comedy and drama. This was followed by Glenn and Gaga tying at the Critics' Choice Awards, though they also gave Olivia their Best Actress in a Comedy Award, so they just, took care of all three of them.
Yeah, they always
And
make sure
then-
to cover them all.
Oh, yes, cover their asses. And then SAG went to Glenn. Very exciting. And then BAFTA went to Olivia. So it was a pretty close race, so to speak. Arguably the most competitive since the 2011 year with Meryl's win. But most people had their money on Glenn finally winning her first Oscar here. But then it went to Olivia Colman. So here we are. It's finally time. Let's talk about why we think Olivia Colman won this Oscar.
I think it's actually more difficult to say than at first thought. I mean, from hindsight, it looks very obvious that you say, of course, the wife only had one nomination. The favorite was much bigger. Olivia Colman also had a lot of awards. There's a lot of ways you can explain this, but I also remember at the time, and I also read some newspapers from the time, and there was a lot of, okay, Best Actress is pretty much a done deal. And you can obviously say that Olivia Colman was realistically a co-favorite. I mean, as you said, she did win the Golden Globe, she did win the BAFTA, she did very well with the critics. It just seemed that the combination of what Glenn Close had won and the overdue factor would be so undeniable that even a co-favorite isn't really taken seriously in this race. Why Olivia Colman won in the end? Actually, it's still pretty difficult to say. I mean, you can say that Julianne Moore, just a couple of years earlier, she also won Best Actress with being her movie's only nomination. But of course, her sweep was stronger and she didn't have real competition.
Right.
Would she have won if she had a more serious competitor in her bigger movie? Who knows? And for Glenn Close, it just maybe, I think that BAFTA, I think that the British voting bloc at the Academy has become more dominant in the last couple of years. I think especially after the Frances McDormand and Anthony Hopkins wins, where both of them, I think, only won pretty much the BAFTA prior to the Oscars, show this. So there was just a clear alternative that you could vote for if you maybe thought that The Wife was not your kind of thing or that The Wife was just not big enough. So it was not like an open race where you couldn't say, okay, which one of the other four do I pick? And I don't want to say vote splitting because, yeah, that's not a thing. But you could definitely say, okay, Olivia Colman is the clear alternative. And Olivia Colman is, of course, also a very charming and nice person. And I think you also cannot forget that. And yes, you have Glenn Close giving a great speech at the Golden Globes, but you also have Olivia Colman give a great speech at the Golden Globes. And they are, of course, very different. And Glenn Close's speech is more serious and more somber and more about the topics of a movie, while Olivia Colman always goes up on a stage also at BAFTAs and just has fun. And she knows how to entertain a room and she knows how to deliver jokes and punchlines and be excited about her awards and be very, just throw jokes around. And you always sense this whenever she accepts an award. And of course, I mean, her Oscar speech is kind of speaks for itself. And yeah, and then of course it is a big performance. I think she probably has the least screen time of all the nominees competing here, but it is a very big and showy performance. There's a certain physical transformation simply by, as you said, showing her overcome by illness and she goes very big. And Glenn Close mostly stays very quiet and it is a very small movie. Why the overdue factor did not help her, I actually still don't know until this day. I mean, I don't want to focus too much on this because I think a lot of great performances and wins are kind of tarnished nowadays because people think those are just overdue or career wins. And some of those can actually be pretty good still performances. And I don't want to say that Glenn Close would have only won because she was overdue or because of sentimental reasons, because as we discussed, it is a great performance. But you would have expected the kind of feeling that it is her time. She has won all those awards. She is the front runner. Let's vote for her to be a little bit stronger. So it is still kind of a little bit perplexing to me.
Yeah. It is very complicated. I mean, this is a race that has been analyzed pretty extensively by people in our circles, at least. And most of the analysis I've read, I do agree with, and agree with a lot of what you said as well. I think Glenn was ultimately, sadly for me, a weak frontrunner because her film was not as well liked compared to the others here. She was a lone nominee, and unlike Julianne Moore in 2014 or Renee Zellweger in the very next year, the competition wasn't weak to the point that they just could default to Glenn and be like, well, just be done with it and vote for Glenn, like they probably felt with Julianne Moore. People were genuinely excited about Olivia, and I imagine she felt like a great discovery for a lot of at least American Oscar voters. And the film was hugely embraced. 10 nominations. Her performance is loud and showy and very entertaining. She checks a lot of boxes. Her only real downsides were maybe a slight lack of name recognition at that time, and the fact that some people thought she was more supporting than lead, and the fact that the film is so off kilter and kind of absurdist that it's like, is this really going to be a performance that they actually go for? But again, she just checks so many other boxes that are so positive that the Academy does like, including playing a real person and doing it pretty vanity free, you know. And if you compare it to Glenn in The Wife, she just doesn't get that opportunity to go all out with it like Olivia does. You know, she has her scenes towards the end, which are very powerful, but for a lot of it, I can imagine if some voters hadn't seen The Wife and then knew that she was a front runner and then finally watched it, they may have been a tad bit underwhelmed by some of what she was doing up to that final act, perhaps. So I think there's a little bit of a burden of expectation that set up the performance to not be seen as good as people were raving it to be, perhaps. And Olivia felt like just like this very exciting alternative opportunity for them to get excited about voting for her.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It is a difficult case, especially because, yeah, you would expect some Academy members maybe even vote for her, even if they maybe didn't feel that she was the best, simply because there is a kind of feeling that it is her time. I
Yeah.
mean, all the other, I mean, she was a weak front runner, but she was a front runner, and all the other front runners won.
Hmm.
Regina
Yeah.
King won, Mahershala Ali won, this other guy won, for some reason.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of cruel that the only category where they say, okay, let's look for an alternative is the one where you say, okay, but this would be the person very much. I mean, of course, Regina King is also very deserving of an Oscar, but
Yeah.
you would say this is the category where you say, okay, this person really should have an Oscar. And it feels
Mm-hmm.
like this is the time she will win an Oscar. But yeah, you can probably say, I mean, most people would probably just say, well, Olivia Colman was better because, yeah, it is a very popular performance. And if she's better is of course up to everyone personally to decide, but she is definitely bigger. And even
Yeah.
though it is not a big role when it comes to screen time, it is just a big, very present role. And as I said when we discussed her performance, her her performance kind of becomes more dominant as the movie goes on. So she is not as present in the beginning, but at the end, when Rachel Weisz has also left the court, and when Sarah has left the court, she becomes more dominant. And I feel that when you walk out of the movie, Olivia Colman is the person you're thinking about,
Yeah. Agreed.
and this just kind of helps. And I would assume that it was a close race. Who knows? Um,
I think so.
yeah, and I just a couple of factors that helped to push Olivia Colman over the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want to sound too depressed about it because she is great. It kind of feels like we're finally. It feels a little
Yeah.
bit like yeah, a funeral,
Mm-hmm.
but um, yeah. I mean, but as we said at the beginning, it is sad that Glenn Close did not win. I don't know how a Glenn Close win would have aged because I do remember at the time there were a lot of I think when the movie came out, a lot of people were very positive about Glenn Close, but it's like in every award season, there comes a point when a performance or movie actually starts winning awards, a lot of people begin to turn against it, and suddenly it's
Yep.
the worst thing they ever saw. And everyone was
Hmm.
like, "Oh my God, Glenn Close winning for the wife, that would be the worst thing ever. Nobody saw this movie." And
Hmm.
it's like, no, there are other small movies that won acting Oscars. And it's not a badly reviewed movie, and it's not a badly reviewed performance. And I had the feeling that during the Oscar season, a lot of people began to rewrite history right away and were acting like nobody likes this performance. She would only win because of sentiment. And I don't want to say there was a backlash, but it felt that there was a kind of, do we really need to do this? Award Glenn Close for this kind of movie? Nobody wants this. Why is she a favorite?
I remember very well that feeling that a lot of people had, especially on Twitter, of talking about that and really dismissing her performance and saying she only could have won because she's overdue.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why she would win. And that's the only reason why people are saying she should win. And I think this is a performance that demonstrates her talent and would not just be an easy legacy win. Is it my favorite performance of hers? Not necessarily, but plenty of people have not won for their
Yeah.
not best performances. So part of me does agree with you in feeling like, why was this the time that suddenly the Academy had to draw the line and pick an alternative when they've been in lockstep with all the precursors of everyone else? And same thing in this category, really. So it's just like, of course, with my luck, my favorite actress gets this opportunity. And sure, we'll give Rami Malek an Oscar. Let's give Mahershala Ali a second Oscar. Why not? And then with Glenn, it's like, oh, well, I don't know. I think I prefer Olivia. Like
Yeah.
that, it's just, it bothers me. It bothers
Yeah.
me. I'm not going to lie.
No, yeah. I mean, I still remember watching the ceremony, and there was this very kind of muted reaction to her Oscar clip. And this was the first
Yeah.
moment when I thought, oh, is she in trouble?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, the reaction of the audience at the Oscars is not an indicator of what is happening, but it just felt like,
Hmm. Yeah. Suspicious.
yeah,
Yes. Um, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, the favorite didn't win anything up to that
yes,
point. So it was like, oh, is this going to go 0 for 10 somehow?
yeah. And I
But
mean, yeah. And I mean, when you say it like this, then why did Yalitza not win?
sure. Yeah.
I mean, Roma did
So,
also not win Best Picture, but it was obviously more beloved by the Academy. But yeah, it's just, as you said, it probably just checked boxes.
mhm.
Both her performance and her off-screen personality just check boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful combination. I just think Glenn has had such horrible luck with the years that she is nominated for, because there's always someone shiny and flashy that they prefer more. Or in the case of the Albert Nobbs, it's like, well,
Yeah, okay.
not many people liked that movie, so that's a little different. But yeah, I don't know. I wish they tied. Wouldn't it be fun to have them tie?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Let's have the Critics' Choice give out the Oscars.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oscars for everyone.
Yep. So perhaps we'll explore some more of my feelings as we get into these questions, if you're ready.
Yep.
All right. Well, starting with Eric Maxwell Bruns, will we finally learn? Is this your most heartbreaking loss? Yes, this is it. As the people I was watching it with that night can attest, I had a very strong negative reaction when this happened. I wish I was filming it so people could actually see. I think I literally screamed, "What?" and just like had to get up and start pacing the room or something. Like it was not good. It was not a good time for me. So yeah, pretty heartbreaking. I'll say this is the one, and it probably will always be this.
Yeah. I mean, I also mentioned it as my most heartbreaking loss. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
at the same time, I think I also said to you at the time, my heart does not really break about the Oscars anymore. I'm probably
Oh yeah.
too cynical
Hmm.
about this whole thing, but I cannot deny that, yes, I was sad for her. It just felt so cruel at this moment. I mean, of course, her Glenn Close loser face was then, of course, also everywhere immediately. It just felt like, really. And of course,
Yeah.
I had this, and I at the time had this negative reaction to Olivia Colman. Today, I'm more relaxed about this. Again, who will I pick? Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, it did hurt at the
Hmm.
time. Yeah,
It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. This was my lost innocence moment with the Oscars, where I'm just like, I cannot get personally invested in this ever again. I
No.
can't do it. And I really haven't. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see whatever happens if she does get back into the lead acting race. We'll see
Yeah.
who I become. But I'd like to think I'd matured a little bit from 2018. Celluloid Siren said, a writer, a singer, a domestic worker, a queen, and a neglected wife. Does this batch of nominees contain the greatest variety in terms of range of roles ever in this category, or is there a year where there is a greater variety in terms of roles?
Well, I would say the greatest variety is 1984.
You think so?
Yeah, those are all different farms. Those are not the same farms.
True. That is technically true.
Um, I don't know. I mean, there is a lot of variety. I did check a little bit. There are, of course, a lot of years where there are a lot of different, the characters are very different. But when you think about it, you do realize, oh, yes, there's maybe a lot of suffering involved because of a man, or they're fighting against injustice. It's hard to say. Personally, I have 1967 as a year where is a lot of
Mm,
variety with the nominees. You have Bonnie and Clyde, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Graduate, Whisperers, and Wait Until Dark. Say four very
yeah.
different performances and
Mm-hmm.
characters, but yeah, probably a lot of years.
Yeah. The ghost of Glenda Miss Jackson, if you nasty, said, does Frances McDormand's voice saying Olivia Colman haunt you at random points of the day out of nowhere, or just me?
Well, does it?
Well, yes. I think the specific delivery of Olivia Colman I have been haunted by for 6 years. So,
Yeah. And the great thing is, it is part of this entire Oscar moment. It's not just Olivia Colman's speech. It's not just Glenn Close's face. Frances McDormand's way of saying Olivia Colman is just part of this entire thing.
it is. That's the whole
What?
package.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
One doesn't work without the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, another one from Christoph. As I just saw your Letterboxd review, would it be easier to deal with the loss of your favorite if she had lost to a middling to bad performance? Because at least you could rant about an undeserving winner. Yes, for me,
Yeah.
a little bit. I think it would be easier for me to be like, oh my God, she was robbed. What a terrible winner. But yeah, the truth is that Olivia is a very good winner, and it's hard to really grapple with that and get upset about her winning and like rant about this big injustice. Because also so many people love this win, so it's hard for me to get people to support my case that Glenn was robbed, you know?
Yeah, difficult to say. I would say my favorite losing performance is Emily Watson in Breaking the Waves, but I cannot complain about Frances McDormand. Here we have her again, winning
Right.
for Fargo. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's easier, but again, it's just comes to a point where I say, well, that's just the Academy. That's just the way it is. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Levi said, first of all, this must be traumatic for you to revisit. Praying for you. Thank you so much, Levi. How does Coleman rank among the following surprise winners? Jessica Tandy, Judy Holliday, Geraldine Page, and Frances McDormand for Nomadland.
Well, first of all, how exactly do we define surprise?
I was going to say, because
Yeah.
I don't think Geraldine Page or Jessica Tandy were surprises.
Yeah, and watch my Judy Holliday video if you think that Judy Holliday's win was a big surprise.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So I would rank them. They are actually all five very great. So this is really no if to the number I have my number five. No disrespect. Those are five great performances. My number one is obviously Judy Holliday. Will love her forever. My number two is Geraldine Page. Another great performance, unfairly tarnished by the talk of just a career win. My number three is Jessica Tandy. I know you're not the biggest fan. Then I have Frances McDormand and I have Olivia Colman actually at number five, but again, five overall great performances.
Yeah, I think most of them are very good. I think. Sorry, I can't not be shady a little bit, but I think I would go for Coleman and then Page and then Holiday and then McDormand and then Tandy.
That surprises me.
So there you go. John Anzalone said, in hindsight, Coleman with a Best Picture contender, Golden Globe win, and BAFTA win en route to an Oscar win makes quite a bit of sense compared to Close's weak film, shock Golden Globe win, SAG win, and BAFTA loss. Were most of us thrown off by the hive perception of a close win and her campaign strength?
Yeah, I think we already talked about this a little bit. That
Yeah, we
in
did.
hindsight, you can explain Olivia Colman's win very easily, but if you were there, if you're old enough to have experienced it yourself, it did seem like Glenn Close's win was set in stone, even with all the advantages that Olivia Colman obviously had, but which were not taken too seriously maybe at the time.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar, which is that when you're in the heat of the season and watching it day to day, I think sometimes you do get a bit of tunnel vision about certain narratives, perhaps. I sort of feel the same way about me predicting Roma would win Best Picture. And like watching it again, I'm like, yes, this is a fantastic movie, but it's also way too subtle to have won. And Green Book just makes so much more sense in hindsight. So, yeah. Christoph said, is this the most career-changing acceptance speech in Oscar history? Related to this question, if Olivia hadn't won, would her career still have soared as much as it did?
Probably is a career-changing speech in some way because I know everyone I know. I mean, I don't know too many people in Germany who are as invested into the Oscars as I am. But even here, a
Shout out
lot of,
Christoph.
yes. But even here, a lot of people I know were talking about her speech, and you have a feeling that she did become much more known. I mean, obviously, she would have become known with a bad speech as well because she won an Oscar, but the speech kind of really pushed her over the edge into international stardom, you can say. This was just such a big moment. I assume her career, if she hadn't won, I think her career would still be the same pretty much.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Yeah. She would still be on the crown, I think.
Yeah.
She would still probably win an Emmy and all that. And yeah. But I do think she charmed so many people, and her whole campaign as a lead was, I think, partly a strategic decision to be seen as a leading lady star, and that's really what she's become, really, in
Yeah.
the years since. So good for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Glorfindel of Gondolin, Olivia Colman's Oscar speech is beloved by many. Would you and your guests rank your top 5 Best Actress Oscar speeches ever?
This was funnily enough more difficult for me than I thought because I realized when I watch YouTube clips of Best Actress wins, I usually always mostly stop at the speech. I'm usually just watching the announcement.
You're just watching the reaction
Yes.
of the ladies.
Yes. Or in the older videos, just the actress gliding up the stairs.
Yeah.
So this was actually kind of difficult for me to find 5 speeches. I have decided to just order them chronologically. So I like Grace Kelly's speech. It's very
Hmm.
short, but just, I don't know, she says everything you need to say when you win an Oscar in just a couple of seconds. I like Louise Fletcher's speech for obvious reasons. Shirley MacLaine's speech is kind of crazy in all, but again, just what we expect from Shirley MacLaine. I like Frances McDormand's first speech for Fargo also very much. And I cannot round up the top 5 without mentioning Olivia Colman. And if I would rank them, Olivia Colman would probably be my number one.
Yeah. I mean, I would also have Olivia in mind, even divorced from my personal feelings of everything that happened. It's an incredible speech. And I would add in Marion Cotillard, who is so excited, so effusive, and there are some angels in this city. Thank you, life. Thank you, love. It's just so much. I also love Jane Fonda's first speech for Clute, being so short and
Yeah.
sweet and to the point, being like, there's a great deal to say, and I'm not going to say it
Thank you
tonight.
tonight.
Yes.
And say thank you for those who applauded.
Exactly. Yes. Oh my God, I love her. Um, and Shirley MacLaine, as you mentioned, but also I love Nicole Kidman's speech too, where she kind of talks about why the arts matter, and I just love what she says in that speech. So, and I guess Halle Berry too, just for how incredibly excited she is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Andy Bayless said, Olivia Colman's speech is my favorite by someone I didn't want to win. It's lovely, but Glenn, what is another case where you love the winner's speech but wanted a different winner?
Well, I just went back to my top 5, and I know I just said I wanted Emily Watson to win instead of Frances McDormand, but when I look at just go by the speeches, it would probably be Shirley MacLaine because I do love her speech. So I'm not mad that she won, but I would have wanted Deborah Winger to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I would do Francis's second speech for Three Billboards. I think that is such an incredible, galvanizing moment, which is so great. I also love Meryl's speech for The Iron Lady. and sort of talking about feeling like, oh, I just heard
Yeah.
half of America turning off their television, being like, her again. So I always love that. Joe Lorenzini, if Olivia Colman didn't win an Oscar this year, would she be Oscarless now, or would she have won for something else? And Liam Gagan asked a similar question here.
I think she would be Oscar-less, to be honest. She feel that she would maybe be like a Miranda Richardson,
Oh, wow. Okay.
like getting a couple of nominations in a short period of time, being a hot new thing, but I just cannot see her winning either for The Lost Daughter or The Father.
I think she would have contended stronger for The Father, just because, one Best Actor, one Best Adapted Screenplay. Maybe some people could have seen it as a makeup Oscar for not winning for The Favorite, maybe.
Yeah. And how did that work out for the actress who actually lost Best Actress that year and was also nominated for Best Supporting Actress?
Well, that's a terrible movie, so I think
Yeah.
that's
Okay, fair.
slightly different. Um, yes, Endorphins. Would Emma Stone have won in lead if she campaigned here?
No.
No,
No.
I don't think so.
I also no.
Nope. Rob Montoya, to add on to that last question, if Emma was placed in lead and Coleman in supporting, would both lose to Glenn Close and Regina King?
I mean, if Emma Stone was placed in lead, I suppose she would be nominated. I don't know who she would lose to. She probably would lose to Glenn Close, but I don't know how the
Yeah.
dynamics of the entire race would shift.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Colman would certainly be nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and I mean, she won Best Actress, so it's hard to say no, she wouldn't win Best Supporting Actress, but I feel that the industry respect for Regina King would be too strong for her to overcome this as a new British actress. I feel that Regina King would still win.
I actually think Olivia would win in supporting too. I just think, that's another case where they clearly loved The Favorite more than Beale Street. And, people love Regina King and everything. So that would have been a really close race. But I imagine just the scene stealing nature of what Olivia does would have been a little flashier for people. But yes, Glenn still she would have won in lead, I think, if Emma was in there instead of Olivia, which is kind of how I thought it would happen earlier in the season. And then they were like, nope, Olivia's lead, the other two are supporting. And I'm like, shit. Jeffrey Kerr, had Emma Stone or Rachel Weisz gone lead for The Favorite instead of Olivia Colman, how different do you think this race would have panned out?
I mean, it's always so difficult to say how the race would have panned out. I suppose Emma Stone would have been nominated. Rachel Weisz is actually, I would say that Rachel Weisz is probably my favorite in The Favorite, but I'm not sure if she would have been nominated for Best Actress if only
Right.
she had been campaigned for Best Actress. If all three of them had campaigned for Best Actress, I have no idea what would have happened. I maybe double nominations for Olivia Colman and Emma Stone,
Yeah, I
but
think
I
so.
doubt that all three. No, all three of them wouldn't have been nominated.
No. I think Emma could be nominated with Olivia, or if Olivia wasn't there, Emma would have been nominated. But no, I don't think Rachel would be in lead, sadly, even though she deserves it.
Yeah.
Declan Cashin, this is a very long question, so I adjusted this. They want me to recast the three favorite ladies in these film parts where there are three female characters. First Wives Club, The Hours, Charlie's Angels, The Other Woman, 9 to 5, Bad Girls, Fried Green Tomatoes, Hannah and Her Sisters. Again, this is too much, so I adjusted this to ask which of those films would we prefer to see the three of our favorite ladies in?
Yeah, so I have picked out of these movies, I have picked the First Wives Club, and I want to see Olivia Colman in the Diane Keaton role, Emma Stone in the Goldie Hawn role, and Rachel Weisz in the Bette Midler role. And I would like to see them in The Hours. And Rachel
Yes.
Weisz is Nicole Kidman, Olivia Colman is Meryl Streep, and Emma Stone is Julianne Moore.
Yeah. I was just going to say The Hours and
Yeah.
agree with you on that casting exactly. Yep.
Where's the remake?
I would love to see it. Yes. All right. Captain Jimmy D, rank these film debut performances. Yalitza Aparicio, Quvenzhané Wallis, Gabourey Sidibe, Catalina Sandina Moreno, Keisha Castle-Hughes.
So I haven't seen Beasts of the Southern Wild and Whale Rider in a long time, so it's a little bit tricky. I would, but for now, from my memory, I would say Gabourey Sidibe at number one, Yalitza at number two, Catalina Sandino Moreno at number three, Quvenzhané Wallis at number four, and apologies to Joey, and Keisha Castle-Hughes at number 5, but I remember that I liked all of them.
Wow. Yeah, I have pretty much the same ranking, except I put Yalitza Aparicio after Catalina Sandina Marino, who would be my number 2.
That's fair.
So, yep. Matthew WG101, is this the closest Glenn ever came to a win? I think yes. And it's not even a question.
Yeah, I also think so.
Yep.
As you said, she had just a lot of bad luck with her other nominations, and don't see another one where she probably came as close as she did with this one.
Nope. Joshua McNeil, why didn't sentimentality prevail this time for Glenn Close? Good question.
Yeah. Again, it's
because people didn't love the movie. I don't know.
It's so hard to say. Again, I don't want to focus too strongly on this because I don't want to tarnish the nominations with saying it's just sentimentality. I have a feeling that after Lauren Bacall lost in the 90s, that the Academy changed a little bit in regards to these kinds of wins where people were like, okay, you have to honor this person because they have been so long in the business, and that there was a small change. So I don't know why this did not help in this case and in others. It's probably because the role was just not flashy enough. I mean, even Julianne Moore at least had Alzheimer's, but Glenn Close really didn't have a very internal, as we said, it's a very internal performance. There's not a lot of showiness. There's nothing physical.
Right.
Just didn't help her.
DVPF, which Glenn Close performance are you most sad about her not winning this one? Although if I were around to like see the Dangerous Liaisons year myself and be invested in that, I might say that. But just because of my own viewing experience, it has to be this one.
Yeah, I have the same. So if I say from my own experience, it's this one. But from what I say, what performance of hers I would have most liked to see win, it would be Dangerous Liaisons.
Exactly. Yep. See, no, not that, Steve. The other one, if Glenn had been nominated for one of her other Best Actress roles this year, Fatal Attraction, Dangerous Liaisons, Albert Nobbs, rather than for The Wife, could she have beaten Olivia Colman?
Well, it's an interesting question because he then also asked that we have to see it like in real time. So basically, Glenn Close does Fatal Attraction or does Dangerous Liaisons now. And
God. Wow.
So that's how I understood his question. If I understood it wrong, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So regarding to Albert Nobbs, so just let's get this out of the way. No, she wouldn't have.
No.
Fatal Attraction. I mean, on the one hand, you could say it's like a post-Gone Girl erotic thriller, but on the other hand, it's 70-year-old Glenn Close doing Fatal Attraction. I have zero idea how the reaction would be to this. I could imagine some people would say, oh, she's brave for doing this, but to be honest, I could rather see this being a Razzie kind of thing, just because it's so what is happening.
Fair point.
Dangerous Liaisons, if this would be rewritten for her to be like this a little bit older. It's of course also a sensual role, but it's obviously much different than Fatal Attraction. If this came out the same year, then of course you would have The Favorite and Dangerous Liaisons. You would have both of these costume dramas, and I could think if this role was rewritten for her and but still be as good and her performance as good as it is in the 80s version, I think she could win for that one.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the only one is Dangerous Liaisons. But even still, I think the theatrics of Olivia and The Favorite would probably still win out anyway. So who knows? Andrew Carden said, rank these losing reactions by most unforgettable. Glenn in 2018, Angela Bassett in 2022, Lauren Bacall in 1996, Ellen Burstyn in 1973, and Sally Kirkland in 1987.
Okay, so I think probably because I experienced it live, I have Glenn at number 1. Just feels this, it just feels this raised eyebrows, oh, okay, they're doing this. It's just, yeah. At number 2, I have Angela Bassett because I think this is the only acceptable reaction to Jamie Lee Curtis winning.
Fair enough.
Yeah. At number 3, I have Sally Kirkland because this eye roll immediately followed by this big fake smile. It's also just too good. Then I have Ellen Burstyn, which is also kind of iconic, and Lauren Bacall is also an unforgettable reaction, but it's still more like it's a little bit sad, and I don't know. But with the other ones, it's a little bit funny. With Lauren Bacall, it's just a little bit sad.
Yeah, it's not quite as expressive to me. So
Yeah.
that's why I would rank that last as well. I have Sally Kirkland as my number 2. Her whole demeanor through that entire presentation is incredible. The way she is like visibly sweating as they're calling her name is just remarkable. Yeah. Amar said, if Glenn Close was cast in the role of the Queen in The Favorite, do you think she would have actually won, or were voters going to keep voting for Colman if she was cast in The Wife instead? Sure, Glenn would have won if she was in The Favorite and she gave a similar performance, you know?
It would
I think she could have done it.
It would probably be a slightly different performance, but as you said, she probably could do it.
Yeah, so that's that. Jonathan Howley, if The Wife had come out in 2011 instead of Albert Nobbs, could Glenn have had a better chance of beating Meryl?
I think Meryl Streep in Margaret Thatcher makeup, doing an English accent, I don't think The Wife can overcome that.
Yep. And Ethan David and Mark Lamb rank Glenn Close's Best Actress nominations.
So first, Dangerous Liaisons, Fatal Attraction, The Wife, and fourth, Albert No.
Yes. Albert, no thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, same ranking as me. Pretty easy ranking there.
Yeah.
Love the top 3.
Definitely.
The less said about Albert Nobbs, the better. Miles McHale, would we have been kind or cruel to her if she'd decided to be Stephanie Germanotta and not Lady Gaga?
I actually have no idea. I don't know.
Well, that was a little bit of a discussion, I think, at the time where people were like, is she going to be credited as Gaga? Is she going to go by her real name, Stephanie Germanotta, for A Star is Born? I think people would have been assholes about it either way, though. I think, people would have been like, oh, look at her. She's trying to be like the serious actress. Now she's a different name. Like, what's going on here?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Knowing how people are on the internet, they probably would have been assholes. Yeah.
Yeah. Joey Gentili said singers, Kesha, Beyonce, Esperanza Spalding, Rihanna, and Shakira were a few of the people considered for A Star is Born. If Gaga was not available, who here would have been your choice?
So, I mean, Beyonce sounds just too good to pass on her, but I would still be very interested in seeing a Shakira version of A Star is Born.
And I would love to hear her singing Shallow.
Yes.
I decided to be different here and go for the least recognized person, which is Esperanza Spalding, because I just think it would be fun to see her actually be like a star being born in that instance, even though the other 3 don't really have that dynamic. I just think it would be fun to see that sort of thing in this version. Brayden, what almost duo from the long-suffering A Star is Born remake are you disappointed not to see? Jamie Foxx and Aaliyah, Will Smith and Jennifer Lopez, Smith and Alicia Keys, Smith and Rihanna, Smith and Beyonce, John Hamm and Beyonce, Russell Crowe and Beyonce, Leonardo DiCaprio and Beyonce, Bradley Cooper and Beyonce.
I mean, there are a lot of options. For pure entertainment value, I would go with Leonardo DiCaprio and Beyonce because I just cannot see it at all. And I just cannot see Leonardo DiCaprio in this role at all, but I would still want to see it.
Yeah, that would be wild. But I think of those, I think Will Smith and Beyonce would have been like an event. Like that would have been huge if that
Probably,
happened. Yeah. So I think that would make sense. Trick Rivers, Glenda Miss Jackson, If You Nasty, and a whole bunch of other people want us to rank the Star is Born leading ladies.
So I have obviously Judy Garland at number 1. I have Lady Gaga at number 2. I have Janet Gaynor at number 3 and Barbra Streisand at number 4.
Okay. Yeah, I have Judy Garland number 1. I actually have Janet Gaynor number 2. Gaga 3, Streisand 4.
Yeah. Janet Gaynor as number 2 also makes sense.
Yeah. Ben Roberts and Callum Reed both want to know if we're ever going to see Gaga get another acting nomination at the Oscars.
I mean, it's always difficult to say, but I would say why not? If she depends on what projects she picks, but if she picks something more Academy friendly at some point, I could see her getting nominated again.
I think like maybe one more time I could see it, sort of like a Cher trajectory of being like, oh,
yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah, not a win.
Yeah, if you did your podcast in like 1984, we would maybe say, do you think we ever see Cher nominated again?
Yeah, exactly. Or Liza Minnelli getting in for The Sterile Cuckoo. Will she ever be nominated again?
Yes, probably not.
Yeah, I think it's right. So I think it's possible. And maybe people might be not loving her campaign style of being so over the top and all that, but I think she could still do it. Malice doesn't live here anymore. The live performance of Shallow at the Oscars that year was incredible. The camera work, the chemistry, Lady Gaga, I was living. If there was an Oscar for Best Live Performance at the ceremony of any year, who do you give the trophy to?
Very difficult because I'm also not gonna say that I know every live performance of the Oscars by heart.
Yeah.
Shallow was an amazing performance. I'm Just Ken was a lot of fun, I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
If I just go by how impressed I was by the singing, my favorite is actually Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion singing The Prayer. I think
Wow.
they were spectacular.
Hmm.
And I would give an honorary Oscar to the 1968 costume design presentation when they all danced in characters.
Absolutely.
When you got your Planet of the Apes disco dance.
One of your hit tweets, I remember.
Ah, good times.
Um, yes. I would also throw in Blame Canada, which Robin Williams
Yes, right.
sang, which was great. I would say Mariah and Whitney singing When You Believe is just an incredible vocal. But you know what? I'm just going to go full recency bias and say I'm Just Ken
Good choice.
because that never gets old for me.
No.
Owen Daly said, rank the pop star best actress nominees: Cher, Gaga, Streisand, Diana Ross, Bette Midler, Doris Day.
So I wasn't sure if I should rank them as for their performances or how I like them as singers. So I just did
I
both,
don't
but I
know.
don't know if you need both. So just say performances, and I
Just
assume,
performances.
yeah, I assume for Streisand it's Funny Girl, and for
Yeah.
Cher it's Moonstruck.
And for
Um,
Bette Midler, it's The
it's
Rose.
the Rose, yeah. So
Not
I
for the boys.
Yes, oh God, oh God. So I have Betty for the Rose at number one. I have Barbara Streisand at number two, Cher at number three, Doris Day at number four, and Diana Ross at number five. It's been a long time since I saw Lady Sings the Blues. I know a lot of people love it. I thought she was pretty, but I'm overdue for a
Okay.
rewatch, so maybe my opinion might change here.
I don't know if you put Gaga in there.
Oh, did I? Oh God, did I forget her? Oh God. I would put her then probably behind Cher and before Doris Day.
Okay. I would go Barbara Streisand number one, always. And then Bette Midler for The Rose. And then Cher. And then Diana Ross. And then Lady Gaga. And then Doris Day. All due respect. Love them
Yeah.
all. But
Yes.
yeah. Miles McHale, how do we get Melissa away from bad Netflix comedies that no one sees and up on that Oscar stage?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. But I mean, I also don't know what she wants to do. I mean, if she wants to do those, if she wants to cash those checks for those movies, I mean, good for her. And if she is waiting for something else to be offered to her, nobody gives it to her, then of course it's sad. But as we said, maybe she can find a passion project that she can produce herself and get back there.
Yeah. I don't want to force her to do anything she doesn't want to do.
Yes.
I just think she loves comedy, especially broad comedy. So, she's done a few things like The Starling a few years ago that were more serious but didn't really go anywhere. I think if she were to play a real person again, she could easily get back to the Oscars, depending on who the person is, I guess.
Yeah.
Captain Jimmy D and Jamie, how does McCarthy compare to other funny ladies nominated for dramatic work, such as Mary Tyler Moore for Ordinary People or Whoopi Goldberg for The Color Purple?
Well, I'm just repeating here what I've said when we talked about Melissa McCarthy. I think if you're a great comedian, I am then not surprised if you can also do great dramatic work. Personally, I would probably say that Mary Tyler Moore and Whoopi Goldberg are maybe stronger. If I would rank them, I would probably rank them above Melissa McCarthy, but Melissa McCarthy is still great.
Yeah. I mean, those two are two of my favorites of all time. So she would just be last by default, but all three are phenomenal. And I would love to see more, comedic actresses like this get that opportunity. Like a Catherine O'Hara, like that sort of thing would
Oh,
be so
yes.
exciting, you know?
Hmm.
A whole bunch of people asked this almost exact word for word question about Bouncing 1991, Curtis in London, Joey Gentili, and Francine May. Julianne Moore has admitted she was fired from Can You Ever Forgive Me? Would she have gotten a nomination?
So I actually never heard the story before we mentioned
Oh,
it today. I wasn't aware of this, but I just say I don't think she would have gotten a nomination for it. Wouldn't have been as exciting for her to do it. Melissa McCarthy obviously had the oh, she can also do this
Hmm.
angle to her. And I mean, Julianne Moore doesn't get nominated as often as you would think an actress like Julianne Moore gets nominated, so I doubt that this would have gotten her in.
Yeah, my response to this is that, like, considering this year we had things like Bohemian Rhapsody and Vice and Green Book, I don't see how Julianne Moore putting on a fat suit wouldn't fit that kind of energy. So I'll just say
Okay.
that.
Okay, fair point.
But to your point, though, yeah, Julianne Moore really, like, I don't know what's going on, but she really doesn't get as many nominations as you would think. Adam said, which former Best Actress winners should have presented each nominee 2008 style?
Okay, so I mean, for Lady Gaga, it's obviously very obvious, but still feels too good to ignore it to have Barbara Streisand present her.
Correct.
For Olivia Colman, I have Glenda Jackson. She was
Ugh.
she was appearing on Broadway a year prior, so she was back, and she also played a queen.
Mm-hmm.
For Melissa McCarthy, again, feels a little bit obvious to have Sandra Bullock, but again, it would be a nice moment. For Glenn Close, I have Meryl Streep. And for Yalitza, I have Marlee Matlin, just because
Hmm.
they both got their nominations for their debuts and they both know how difficult it is to get ahead in this industry
Mm-hmm.
and to be recognized for the talents that you have if you don't fit in the way Hollywood wants you to fit in.
Yeah, that's a great combination there. Well done. Here's what I came up with. I also said Barbara Streisand for Lady Gaga, so we agree on that. I was very lazy with the Olivia Colman one, and I was just like Helen Mirren, whatever. She played a queen.
Yeah, also a queen, yeah. Lots
Yeah.
of queens.
Yep. Many queens. For Glenn Close, I would want a fellow legend and kind of a contemporary of hers from the 80s. So I decided to say Jessica Lange, because I don't know if they've ever really done a lot together. I'd just like to see what she would have to say about Glenn.
This would be
You know?
great. Yeah.
Yeah. For Jalitza Aparicio, I said Sandra Bullock, actually, because of the Alfonso Cuaron connection.
Hmm.
Think would be interesting.
Yeah.
And for Melissa McCarthy, I did Emma Thompson, because there's a comedic element and there's, Emma Thompson's a writer. So I just think that would just be fun.
That would be great. I would love to see all those women on the stage together.
I know.
Yeah.
Why aren't we producing the Oscars?
Yes.
Alicio said, which of these films would you most want to see a prequel to, and which would you most want to see a sequel to?
Okay. For prequel, I have already said, I think the backflashes and the wife deserve their own story. And the name of the movie would be A Short Story, hint, hint.
Ooh.
Yeah. And for a sequel, I have not decided yet. So I have read that. So I would like one for The Favorite because I know that Lady Sarah apparently she outlived the Queen by 20 years, and she apparently got back to England at some point, and I would like to see
Yeah.
what she's up to. It would be called
Mm-hmm.
Two Favorite. Um, then
Okay.
I would like to see A Star Has Died, which focuses on what
Oh,
happens to Ellie. And then
wow.
also think The Wife could have a sequel. So what happens to Glenn Close? And this is called The Writer. I want to see all
Hmm.
those movies. So Hollywood, get going.
Wow. Beautiful. I can't top that. I'm going to say Joan Castleman, 10 episode limited series called Joan.
Oh,
Just Joan.
just Joan. Yeah,
Just Joan. um, tracking her journey
yeah.
post Joe and becoming a
Oh,
writer at age 70 or whatever.
Emmys for everyone.
Yes. But I feel like most of these feel pretty self-contained to me, so I don't really know if I need sequels necessarily, but yeah, definitely the favorite of these. I would love to see more explored in this world. David said, rank the nominees based on how well you think they would do as Anna Held in The Great Ziegfeld. Well, someone clearly knew you were on this episode.
Yeah, apparently don't no idea where those questions came from.
Hmm.
So kind of tricky because obviously nobody can do Anna Held in the same way as the original.
Of
But
course.
I tried. So I have Olivia Colman at number one because she has this chaotic energy. I have Melissa McCarthy at number two. She would obviously be a very different Anna Held, but again, she can do the comedy and the drama.
Yep.
I have Glenn Close at number three, maybe a more intellectual approach to the part, but I guess it could work. Lady Gaga at number four, maybe she would be a little bit too method, who knows? And I have Yalitza at number five, but this is really purely based on her performance in Roma, which is just like so different to
Yeah,
what she would have to do in The Great Ziegfeld. But I would love to see her audition and just see just show a different side
that's true.
to her
Yeah.
acting.
I have Glenn at number one, naturally. She does some phone acting at the beginning of The Wife, so I feel like she could channel that energy in that phone scene, just saying. But yes, same ranking otherwise of, yeah, Colman, McCarthy, Gaga, Aparicio. Well, let's continue this here with Sophia Simonello, who said, for your guest, rank these roles based on how you think Louise Reiner would have handled them.
Well, the mean answer is that we say, okay, Louise Reiner just did The Good Earth, now let her do Roma.
That's what I was
But
going to
I'm just
say.
gonna, but I just got okay. I'm just gonna ignore Roma,
Okay.
and I'm just gonna say, I think she would. I think I would want to see her in The Favorite.
Hmm.
She can be very big, like in a Great Ziegfeld, but she can also be very quiet. Maybe the queen would have to be a German queen. I don't think she could do a British accent,
Yeah.
but I think we could rewrite this a little bit. Then I would say The Wife, just for all the internal acting. At number three, I have Can You Ever Forgive Me? Maybe a good comeback project. I have A Star is Born at number four, but that depends if it's a musical or not. So if it's more like the 30s version, I could see her do this very well, but I don't see her as a Lady Gaga like pop star, if I'm completely honest.
I would agree with you on that particular point. She is no Lady Gaga in the pop star department. um, yes, my shady answer, of course, is Cleo in Roma, stoic, playing someone of a different race. You know, it's her bread and butter.
Yes.
Uh, but, you know, she could actually do a role like that. I'm just saying, you know, I think that would still be good. But would love to see her in The Wife. She could certainly do that very easily, I think. The Favorite, I don't know if I could quite see her committing that hard to the full loudness of it, but I could be wrong. And then, yeah, Can You Ever Forgive Me? And then A Star is Born. Joey Gentili, here we keep going. Special for your guest. Recast these 2010s Oscar talents, Karen Black and Louise Reiner, in the nominated roles, with Haley Steinfeld, Rooney Mara, and Kate Winslet as the other three.
Yeah. So again, it's a little bit tricky casting Roma.
Yeah.
So I just it's like just like a process of elimination. I again have Louise Reiner in The Favorite. I have Karen Black in Can You Ever Forgive Me? I think
Oh.
this could work. I have Rooney Mara in A Star is Born. I could see her. I don't know if she can sing like this, but I could see her being on the stage and playing a pop star.
Mhm.
I have Kate Winslet in The Wife. Seems like this is something that she could do. And then by default, I have Haley Steinfeld in Roma, but again, not sure if she
Probably
should.
not. Okay. Well, I have Kate Winslet in The Wife as well. I have Karen Black in The Favorite, which I think would be
Yeah,
so wild. um,
this would have been my other option. Yeah.
yes. Haley Steinfeld, I have in A Star is Born because she also can sing. I have Louise Reiner in Roma. Thank you very much. And I said Rooney Mara doesn't fit a single one of these, but she's putting on a fat suit and doing Can You Ever Forgive Me? Let's let's just do it. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Yes.
She can be very cynical and sort of misanthropic, so you know.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Chels, obligatory Survivor Traders questions. Which show would you like to see them on? Who has the best social game? Who wins challenges? Who's medically evacuated? Who wins?
Okay, I need your help here because everything I know about Survivor and Traitor, I know from your podcast.
Okay. Well, you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable like making
So,
that
so
call.
I know that they have to kind of build groups and get trust from other people and
Yeah, and
have to
they're
do specific.
voting each other
So
out.
just
Yeah.
okay. So I just thought that I would assume that Olivia Colman, I would assume that Queen Anne doesn't do well. I would assume that she
Yeah.
wouldn't fit in anywhere and that people wouldn't want to work with her on
Mm-mm.
anything.
Yeah. No.
I could imagine that, I mean, obviously, Melissa McCarthy's character has, I don't, probably for a show called Traitor, I would assume that would work. And I would assume that Glenn Close in The Wife would be kind of knowing how
Mm-hmm.
to, if she has to, again, I'm sorry, I don't know the
No, it's
games too
fine.
well, but if she has to do any manipulating, I suppose she could do it.
Yeah.
I suppose, Roma, Yalitza, I hmm, doubt that she would. I fear that she would maybe be too quickly overtaken by somebody like with a more dominant personality.
Yeah.
And Ellie from A Star Is Born, I think she could probably do a little bit, but I also think that at some point she would be kicked out.
Hmm.
So sorry, that's all I can
No,
add here.
that was pretty
I
good.
listen.
I mean, for this group, I would say The Traitors makes more sense than Survivor, so I'll say that. I think Queen Anne is medically evacuated either way because she just cannot physically compete in any of this, so not happening. I think Cleo would be a really good traitor. I think she would be great at, very subtly making moves and nobody really sees it or detects it. So she'd do very well. I think Joan could do extremely well, and I think she would possibly be a winner, even if she was a traitor, but because she just, she's so good at holding in secrets that there's no way people would suspect that she's a traitor. So I think she could do very well. Lee Israel, I think, would be kind of unpleasant to be around, and they would just vote her out early because she's not willing to play the game. And I think Allie would be a very loyal sort of second in command to somebody, but would not win. So in my alternate version of reality, I'm saying Joan Castleman is the winner.
Sounds all very plausible.
Yes, thank you. Few more here with snubs. Jeremy Kaplan. There was a lot of buzz around Toni Collette's performance in Hereditary this year and the possibility that she could be nominated. But was this even realistic? How close do you think she actually came to a nomination?
I mean, it's again very tricky, but I suppose she didn't come too close. I feel that the Academy's bias against horror is just too strong.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think she was sixth. I don't think she was seventh. I think maybe if we're lucky, we could say she came in 10th or something. But I just think it should have been a slam dunk. But the horror bias is just a hell of a thing to overcome. Yeah.
And I mean, we know that Lupita Nyong'o didn't get nominated. So
right.
If Lupita Nyong'o had been nominated, we could say, okay, they were slowly warming up. Maybe she was sixth, but since she wasn't nominated either, it feels like just not happening.
Mm-hmm. Juan Carlos Ojano, how does it feel to be Emily Blunt this year? And also Duck Soup said, will Emily Blunt ever get a leading actress nomination?
Well, first of all, Emily Blunt can have sex with John Krasinski anytime she wants, so she is fine.
Okay.
But to talk about her achievements as an actress, yeah, probably sucks in a kind of way, but at the same time, it feels like neither Mary Poppins Returns nor A Quiet Place, both of them feel like logical snubs in some way. I mean, Mary Poppins is a kind of anomaly in Oscar history, even the original, that a movie like this was so embraced, and it's a sequel to a very beloved movie, and a very iconic performance, so hard to overcome, especially since it's an Oscar-winning performance. And for supporting, you again have the bias against the genre, so it doesn't feel too surprising that she wasn't nominated at all. But I do think that a leading nomination might be in her future.
Yeah, I would say how it feels to be her this year, probably pretty shitty. I mean, to contend for these two films and winning SAG for A Quiet Place, both films getting Oscar nominations. Honestly, I do think it was like a nightmare scenario for her where she was probably sixth in both categories, which is so wild to think about. Do I think she'll ever get a leading nomination? It's possible, but I feel like the fact that it hasn't happened yet is making me feel like it won't ever happen. I don't know if that's being too cynical, but I just feel like she contended for so many things all the way back to the 2000s. The fact that she just got in supporting for Oppenheimer last year, I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a given, but really depends on if she gets the right project.
Existential Rock, despite this great lineup, a lot of this year's best still got ignored, in my opinion. What's your best snubbed actress lineup? Are there years where you think 5 was just not enough slots?
I mean, first of all, 5 slots is almost never enough for best actress. In a lot of years, you can just... I don't think we need a best actor category, if we're being honest. I think we could just have either 10 best actress nominees or 2 different best actress categories.
Best
both
actress be fine. And best actress part 2. Yes.
Yes. For snubs, I have to be honest, a lot of movies I haven't watched in a long time. It feels like Tessa Thompson, Viola Davis, and Toni Collette are the 3 most obvious names. I think Charlize Theron in a way also, but again, I haven't seen those movies in ages, so cannot comment too much here.
Okay, well, here's my 5 that I came up with. So I said Toni Collette, of course. Thomasin McKenzie for Leave No Trace, even though she was campaign supporting. I think she's the lead of that movie. Regina Hall for Support the Girls, for sure. Viola Davis for Widows. And I would also throw out Catherine Hahn in Private Life, which I think she's really excellent in. So that would be my 5.
Sounds good.
Yes. And then The Real AF 2021. Thoughts on Vox Lux? And do you believe Natalie Portman deserved to be nominated? If so, where?
Here I have to admit I have not seen it.
Okay. It's a very divisive movie. I don't know if you would like it. I really like her in it. I don't love the movie. It makes a lot of choices. Let's just say that. But yeah, very fully committed. She's playing a pop star. I don't think I would nominate her.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I should check it out.
We'll see. Let's move on to our final segment where we'll reveal who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. Fritz, I don't think there's any question to who this will be, what you say, so just go ahead and say it.
Yeah. I would assume the runner-up was Glenn Close. I mean, you can easily say because she did not win, who knows? But I just feel she did have all those pre-Oscar awards and she did have all the buzz. I just can't imagine that she wasn't even a close runner-up.
Yep. She was one of the most obvious runners-up for me, personally. I just think none of the other 3 really had any kind of momentum to get there. I know Gaga had it early in the season, but A Star is Born completely faded by the end of that season, so I just don't think she had the support. Plus, they're voting for her in song. Melissa McCarthy, never really got traction, unfortunately, for winning. And for Roma, yes, that's a movie they loved, but I just don't know if her performance really had that kind of passion necessarily beyond at least getting a nomination. So it has to be Glenn. So, big question for you to end this here. Who would you have voted for from this lineup?
So this was actually much more difficult than I thought. At first, I thought it would be easily Glenn Close. Then I had to rewatch The Favorite, and I thought, okay, Olivia Colman is actually pretty great. So I was caught between those 2, and then I thought I just take the easy way out, or not really the easy way out, but I just said I would vote for Yalitza Aparicio.
Oh wow, okay, interesting.
As I said, it just feels that the performance is kind of a little miracle for her, and despite her having such a internal and not overly emotional performance, this is really the character that sticks with me the most and I keep thinking about the most, and where I have the feeling that I really watched a journey. And I know the other actresses are all doing more and they're all actually very deserving, but I just feel that what she did touched me personally the most. The scene where she gives birth will probably haunt me forever. And I don't know, it just feels it just is the kind of performance that for some reason, I don't know, even despite the smallness and the stillness, leaves the biggest impression with me.
Wow. I love that. Great pick. Very good. Well, for me, I love a lot of these performances. I don't think I'm going to surprise many people here either and say I would have voted for Glenn Close. And part of that is just my being a fan of hers, of course. Part of it is just the momentum of being like, oh, this could finally be her time. But I also truly do think she carries that movie on her back more than anyone else here in terms of she is the one that she is the MVP the most. All the other films do have their good things about them that can distract me at times. For me, Glenn Close in The Wife, she is the wife, quite literally. But she just has always kind of stayed with me. Some of those looks that she gives in the film, I think, just have always left an impression on me. So Glenn would get my vote. Olivia would be very close, but
and it would be
Glenn.
Yeah. And just to add, if I would actually be an Academy member and I had been an Academy member at the time, I probably would have voted for Glenn Close because she would actually be my runner-up, and I think it would be very deserving.
That's good to hear. I'm glad that you weren't someone who was gonna shit on her performance like some people do.
Never.
In the award space. So thank you so much, Fritz. This was good. I got through the episode without crying, and I had such a great time talking with you about this race. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great fun to talk about this year with you. And I hope I didn't disappoint you for what I said about Glenn Close. I think I was very nice to her.
You were, and I really do appreciate it.
And I meant it all.
Oh, well, where can people find more of you in the internet?
So you can find me on YouTube for Fritz and the Oscars, and you can find me on Blue Sky, Fritz and the Oscars. I will keep my Twitter accounts. I won't delete it, but once, I suppose when the episode airs, my Best Actress game will be over, and then I will probably stop posting there and hope to see many of you on the other side.
Yes. Thank you all so much for listening. You could find me on all platforms, including Blue Sky, at Kevin_Jacobson. The show's at Oscar Runner Up on Twitter, Instagram at And the Runner Up Is, and Blue Sky at And the Runner Up Is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you heard, go to patreon.com/And the Runner Up Is for a whole bunch of bonus episodes. Next week, it's the season finale of the 2010s, where we'll be breaking down the Best Actress lineup of 2019, where the nominees were Cynthia Erivo in Harriet, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan in Little Women, Charlize Theron in Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger in Judy, with the winner being Renee Zellweger. So with that, thanks again, Fritz.
Thank you.
And I will bid you all adieu.